And
Carry on.
so I got that attorney to violate the misprision of felony code. They said, well, we're not going to do anything about this. We don't have any duty to act. This, and I said, well, yes, you do. Read the statute. Okay, so from that point, I went to the attorney general, and I kind of skipped a couple of the levels of authority having jurisdiction. And the reason I did is because that attorney is a member of the Bar Association, as is the attorney general. Okay. And the reason I did that is to show that if the attorney general, if he fails to perform a duty, now I have two examples of members of the same private organization committing the same offense against the same target victim.
Which is called collusion.
That's collusion, exactly. So
Gentlemen, we are
the
now,
attorney general.
hold on one second, gentlemen. So you know, we are now live and streaming over on Facebook and Twitter. Go carry on.
Okay. So the attorney general did exactly what I predicted he would do. Okay. Now, the thing about criminal minds that makes them vulnerable is that they are predictable. And I predicted that the sheriff, that the lieutenant, that the attorney general would take the bait. And the attorney general violated my rights as a victim of crime and referred me back into the care of local law enforcement, which is the agency that committed the offenses against me. So now I have cause and standing to not only move civilly against the attorney general, but also criminally against the attorney general. So what do you do when the attorney general, when he is obstructing justice?
Beautiful. I'm glad you asked that question, and here's how you're going to address that.
Well, I know. Let me give you the answer.
A man, Derek Staton Gonzalez, was caused harm by way of.
Hold on.
Let me finish. Let me finish.
No, let him answer you. Let him answer you real quick.
No.
It's only going to take him a second.
Question to the id.
Let him answer. Let him answer, please, and then carry on.
Well, I'm just look. It was a hypothetical question that I'm posting to the id.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
carry on.
So the question that people will want to know is the answer they want to know is what do you do when the attorney general doesn't do his job? Who is the authority having jurisdiction over the attorney general? It is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So I proceeded to go to the FBI and filed a criminal report against a quote unquote criminal agency whose agents were obstructing justice. And I described all the particulars of the events. And at the very end of the conversation, the agent on the end of the line says, well, who are these people? What's their names? And what's the name of the organization? I said, it is the Attorney General of California and the Republican and Democratic parties of California. And she says, we can't get involved. And she hung up. Okay. So now I have an FBI agent who has been willfully blind to the report. Now, I have not done the FOIA request yet to get the transcript of the call. So what do you do when the FBI agent says, we're not going to do anything? Well, you call the special agent in charge of his field office. They're called the SAC, S-A-C. Yep. And you say, Mr. Special Agent in charge, I want you to take that agent's badge and gun from them and remove them from office. Okay? And notify a prosecutor that they have performed as an accessory after the fact in conspiracy to obstruct justice. And that's exactly what we're charging every single one of these people with. Okay? So what do you do if the special agent in charge, if he doesn't do his job, or she, you go to the U.S. attorney. The U.S. attorney is the one that has the power to arrest your FBI agents. Okay? Now, what do you do if the U.S. attorney fails to perform their duties? Well, now we get into conflicts of interest and who has jurisdiction. And this is where the fourth branch of government comes into play, the grand jury. Okay. Agents for the Democratic parties, the Republican parties, the bar associations acted in concert to abrogate the citizen's right to privately prosecute criminal matters in the courts at all levels of jurisdiction. This is an ancient right and power that goes all the way back to the earliest days of the English legal system. Okay. And the Supreme Court, I shouldn't say the Supreme Court, agents for the Bar Association who act as judges have subverted and abrogated that right. They've destroyed that right by making law from the bench in cases where they have said specifically, we can see no cognizable interest of the private citizen to enforce the law. When there exists a mountain of precedent that shows that not only does the citizen have the right to privately prosecute because they may have suffered damages or harm, or they might be acting to protect a party that's incapable of protecting themselves, but there is actually precedent out there that says that the private citizen has the right to seek criminal sentencing, that's jail, merely for the pleasure of vengeance. Because all suits at law are a civil war, and our courts are the alternative to violence. And these are all peace officers. All of your court officers are peace officers or conservators of the peace. It is not their job is not to derail controversy and conflict. Their job is to maintain the peace. Where the citizen has, go ahead.
Go ahead, Derek. Smash it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Watch this.
So
smash it, man.
I agree with that's how it's supposed to be. All right. But we have to comprehend that it is no longer a de jure form of government. What you're speaking of is actually how the de jure government would function if it was in existence at the moment in time. Now you can invoke it. Don't get me wrong. These people wear multiple hats, but it's a matter of the way you move that dictates how they move. Okay. For example, you can have a ministerial administrator on the public at law side, and that same ministerial administrator can switch a hat and then become a chancellor in an Article 3, subsection 2, subpart 1, exclusive jurisdiction of equity court.
Or a magistrate.
Chambers. Right.
Or a magistrate.
Let me show you this. When we're using statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, regulations, and somehow, yes, and somehow people compute that it applies to them. Let me just read you something real quick. And James, Mr. Ehrlich, who was a famous defense attorney, once won an entire case using nothing but the Bible. He wrapped it in a soft cover, and he used the Bible on a jury of 12, and that's the only thing he used, and he won the entire case. And I just want to read something to you, and I want to explain to you what statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, and regulations really are, and whom they actually apply to. So it says, knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man, but for the lawless, and the disobedient, for the ungodly, the heathens, right? And for the sinners, for unholy and profane, for murderers of fathers and murderers of mothers, for manslayers, for whoremongers, for them that defile themselves with mankind, because mankind is a kind of man. It's not man, right? And for mercantiles, men stealers, for liars, for perjurers, perjured persons, right? And if there be any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine, all right? Everything I do is based on doctrine and sound principles, okay? And what it's telling you in 1 Timothy is the law was not written for a righteous man. Okay, now hold on, it gets better. So what law are they speaking of in 1 Timothy section 9? They're talking about the law of the Pharisees. The law of man only applies to the ungodly, the heathen. Now, the word legal, the very definition of the word legal, actually means the undoing of God's law. So when they ask me, Derek, are you practicing law? I would never practice law. First of all, law has been perfected since the beginning of time. All I'm merely doing is enforcing the law. There's a clear-cut difference. I didn't write the law. I just abide by it. I am a lawful man, not a person. I'm not a thing. I'm a man. So let me go on to show you something else. We get into Timothy and it says, thou therefore, 2 Timothy, thou therefore, my son, be strong in the grace, again, grace being an equitable word, which is what ministerial administrators are supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be administering the grace of our Heavenly Father. So help me God. Okay, their first oath is actually to God. And people go through the semantics of saying, oh, well, what God, the bala, Satan, yada, yada, yada. You move the court. And you have to understand that the highest court on the land is not the Supreme Court. It's you, ladies and gentlemen. It's yourself. The four corners of the paper is your court, and you can hold court 24/7. Okay. And I've proven this. And the things that thou hast heard of me among many, witness, the same commit thou to faithful men who shall be able to teach others also. All right. When we're looking at man's law, man is envious of God and has always tried to play God. And we see that with GMOs. We see that with the statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, and regulations. I talk to many foreigners who are in other countries that go, I came to America thinking it would be great, only to find a bunch of dictators wearing badges. Everybody out there wearing a badge or cloaked with some veil of superiority in an alleged society really is a mini dictator who seeks to enforce their will upon you. Now it's a question of whether or not you know how to identify the trespass, because there really is only one law in the entire nation, of which the nation is completely devoid of all law. The United States, for all intents and purposes, is lawless. And let me explain to you why it's lawless. Because contract creates the law and equity follows the law. And because we know this to be self-evident and true, all men are responsible for knowing the law because they're all responsible for knowing the contracts they enter into.
Yes.
Now, the Constitution does not coffer you any rights. I used to be one of those wingnuts running around the court going, the Constitution, I have a constitutional right. But I was wrong. I have an unalienable right that is affirmed and cemented by the Constitution, which is sound doctrine and principle and rules for the alleged government to never trifle with or cross the line. So when you're speaking about the 14th Amendment, I see what you're doing, but at the same time, understand that that 14th Amendment was never ratified by a de jure government, which means it doesn't apply. It's nothing more than public policy that they're using through their corporate charter. So I'm just distinguishing. I'm not saying that anything you're saying is wrong. I'm just simply stating that there are two different jurisdictions.
We don't have to mention the 14th Amendment in order to use it.
Right. Okay? I agree.
Okay. So, and that really is the foundation of the audit of the tarball. That is that all parties in a matter have a right to due process. Period. End of story. It's indisputable. You know, that's just what it is.
Adjoining all of this effort.
Right. And that
what's
is
important is adjoining all of the people that it's happening to. That's what should be important here, especially the homeless, because the numbers are rising, gentlemen.
Right.
And I don't have any more noble cause than to put the brakes on what we have going on. And even the house thing, man. What are they going to do if all of a sudden tens of thousands of people start moving into houses? They don't have enough. I don't think they.
Well, that's exactly why they're not executing the 24 million foreclosures right now. This COVID thing is a way of releasing a pandemic bond. I just witnessed
that BlackRock just scored. They just scored trillions. People have no idea.
I just watched a documentary 2 days ago of a woman who works for the government who was stating how they attribute or count COVID deaths. And she said, here are the facts. If you die of a heart attack, yet you have tested positive for COVID in the past, we register it as a COVID-related death. Now, anybody trying to keep accurate numbers, any scientist trying to keep accurate information upon their experiment, because remember, everything's a theory until it's unproven, right? Or proven not to be so anymore. Gravity is nothing more than a theory. Time is nothing more than a theory.
Can I interject something right there?
Uh-huh.
Plausible deniability is one of the tactics that the Bar Association, the Democrats and the Republicans have used to their advantage from the beginning. Plausible deniability. And when we start getting into cases where plausible deniability is a major factor, I mean, we're looking at a really big can of worms.
Can we agree that a case is nothing more than an opinion?
Yes, we can agree.
Okay.
We can agree.
So if let's use Trezevant versus the city of Tampa Bay for an example, because a lot of people like to use that. All right. And I'm going to explain something to you, your listeners, everybody out there. And just keep in mind, I'm just a man. I'm nothing special. I don't know anything more than anybody else, but there are some sound doctrines and principles for what I'm about to speak that aren't written in any books. Okay. And here it comes. Trezevant versus the city of Tampa Bay, Florida was a case that was handled in 1984 where an officer pulled over a man against his will, held him on the side of the road for 23 minutes, and he reaped the reward of it was something like $25,000 or something like that. So it boiled down to being like $1,400 a minute, right? And I'm paraphrasing at this point. Those are not the particulars in the details.
More precisely, about $1,080 a minute or some crap like that. It was a pretty big
There you
amount.
go. Right. Okay. So here's the principles and the doctrines that I'm going to go off of here. And these are just in my own head. You're not going to find this in a book. Why today in the 21st century, when I know that the FRN note, the Federal Reserve note, has depreciated by 97% of its buying power, would I agree to use Trezevant versus the city of Tampa Bay when I know that dissimilar things should not be joined? Doesn't mean they can't be, but I am the deciding factor of whether or not I will consent to that being applicable or not, period. Secondly, when evaluating the depreciation of the Federal Reserve dollar, are you meaning to tell me that my rights also have diminished? My unalienable rights have diminished in value? I don't think so. And how do we get this? How do we find this to be applicable? Well, we look at the gold standard and we look at the price of gold in 1984 and how much Trezevant would have been able to buy in 1984 with his award, with his winnings, right? From the unlawful arrest and seizure of his property and person, correct? And we look at that. And we realize very, very quickly that if we are still using Trezevant versus the city of Tampa Bay, Florida, we agree and consent that our rights, our unalienable rights, are considerably worth less than what they were in 1984. It's asinine. But what you can do is utilize the information within the case to come to a sound, firm understanding that being accosted against your will, absent a victim, is actually a criminal offense that is orchestrated against you based upon the fact that a public policy enforcer believes that you're engaged in commerce while falsifying a record on the side of the road, absent the fact that you're not engaged in commerce, hauling persons or things or goods for services and a payment, right? So right there on the side of the road, you have an agent and agency who's egregiously declared an emergency when no emergency is present. He's created danger on the side of the road. He's accosted you against your will. They will tell you that being pulled over on the side of the road is not constitute as an arrest. But if you are incapable of moving an inch because they tell you you can't, the red lights are on, you're not to move. That is an arrest, ladies and gentlemen. It is a violation of your unalienable rights to travel, to migrate, to move, the right of locomotion in modern day conveyances to go from point A to point B, absent a victim. That is restriction of your movement, not liberty. Liberty is permission on a ship, which is what they're operating under, which is their public policy, corporate charter that they presume and assume that you belong to as a volunteer for your lack of knowledge. And the good book tells us that my people shall suffer for their lack of knowledge. And I will always lean back on this Bible, the King James 1611 version. And the reason for it is it's the book of all the laws. It's the original book on banking, and it is the original book on trust. And if you pick up that holy book and you just start reading it and open up your heart, you can see that what gun-toting morons are doing on the side of the road has nothing to do with protecting your unalienable rights, which is their oath of office. That's their duty, is to protect your unalienable rights. But how do you protect a right? How do you protect something that you know nothing of? I've asked countless officers, you took an oath of office, correct? Oh, yeah, absolutely. I said, and you took an oath to defend the Constitution, correct? And the Constitution pertains to the unalienable rights of the people that shall not be abridged, the enumerated and the unenumerated. Well, absolutely. I said, can you tell me anything else about the Constitution? No. Well, how do you defend something that you've never read? How do you pledge an oath, which is for life? For life, how do you pledge an oath to something that you've never read? And furthermore, how do you defend it if you don't comprehend the contract that you entered into? Remember, all men are responsible for knowing the contracts they enter into. Thus, ignorance of the law excuses no man, period, because contract creates the law and equity follows the law. You guys following me?
Because that's what you have with administrative agents, these agents for the agency.
So everything is a trespass.
Engaging you, period. Yeah, trespassing you the moment they engage you.
Trespassing is past tense. It's always a trespass. It's present. Everything is present. And here's why. In equity, when we look at a trespass in equity, the trespass continues day after day until remedy is had. Do you know how powerful what I just said is?
We are flowing
a trespass versus a title or statute code violation. A trespass is something that continues to happen day after day until remedy is had. That means if you trespassed against me yesterday and haven't offered me compensation for your dereliction of duty, your breach of public policy, your breach of the public oath, everything that correlates to that continues to transpire day after day until remedy is had, which means the accumulating compensation continues because the remedy hasn't been had, which means the assault is still currently going. Whether or not they're still in contact with you is irrelevant. A trespass has been had. And until it's remedied, that trespass continues, causing a man harm. Furthermore, if I don't stand up against these sinister actors who are trespass against I as a man, then I'm allowing my fellow brothers and sisters to be trespassed against as well, because I haven't set the precedent that we will not stand for this or put up with it.
Which he has established a standing as a man, and now he is the witness and has, I think, what a lot of people like to call status to bring this thing, because you got the DMV thing going on in the state of Nebraska.
Yes, state. And it's going to be an absolute blast. I'm looking forward. And the reason that I don't go on the offensive, here's why. If I go on the offensive, I have to prove my claim. But if they haven't given me any documentation yet, I don't have any evidence. See, I like to use their own evidence against them. So you're going to bring a claim against me. You're going to threaten me by way of phone, by way of wire, by way of computer. That's a Title 18 violation. But I'm not going to call it a Title 18 violation. I'm going to call it a trespass by way of coercion, by way of intimidation, by way of threatening, menacing phone calls, by malice and ill will and intent, and I can prove all that by having the phone calls recorded, by having the mail matter in my hand, but I can't prove any of that prior to them making a move. It's a game of chess. Let them make the move because it's fatal. And here's why. Check this out. If I share my screen, Ken, are your viewing audience going to be able to see it or not?
I'm not. Yeah.
All right. Let me just read it.
Share screen. I can put whatever you want to put up. And
the price is wrong.
We're flowing in
check it out.
Multiple groups right now.
The price is right. The price is wrong. Reimbursement of expenses for acquitted criminal defendants. All right. Now, defendants, first of all, is a fiction. Okay. You can't be a defendant. You're either a man or you're a fiction. Right. And they say that man can't operate in the fictional world. Well, that's not true either. Okay. Two courts can run simultaneously at the same time. You can hold your own court of record, because their record is actually private and they presume and assume that and believe it to be public when it's not. Okay. So anyway, it says not guilty. These two simple words elicit intense relief from any defendant at the conclusion of a criminal trial. As one harrowing ordeal ends, however, a new one inevitably takes shape. And what they're talking about here is if you allege that I, a man, have caused somebody harm, injury, damage, or loss and can't prove your claim, then I have a right to remedy, and remedy are rights and rights are remedy. And that remedy can be in the form of compensation. Now, who says what compensation is? I get to dictate that. Ladies and gentlemen, they are abrogated the gold clause, but there are statutes that have been put back in place by Congress that are held in the Library of Congress that state that they still have an obligation to pay you in gold or silver if that is what you want. Okay.
Right.
So I could ask for eggs, chickens, goats, milk, land. It doesn't really matter. Actually, I can't ask for land because they don't control land. They don't control land at all. In fact, if you look at your warranty deeds, you don't own shit. You're a tenant, and you can accept and acknowledge from the grantor being the grantee. You can accept and acknowledge the colorable title, if you will, but it still doesn't grant you the land. That's real estate and property, which isn't land at all. So I'm getting off topic here, but what I'm talking about is your right to compensation can be whatever you dictate. If you want their assets, I always tell them I want their asses and their badges, and they go, "Oh, you can't cuss in here." I go, "Oh, you misunderstood what I meant by asses." I like to play the word trivia game with them too, because that's exactly what they're using against us. And you can't use the word ass in here. And I go, "Oh, I meant assets. I'm sorry, I was abbreviating that. Assets and badges is what I'm here today for. That's what I'm looking for. I don't need any other compensation. I want to hang one of their badges on my wall and smile every morning knowing that I got a tyrant off the street, preventing my brothers and sisters from being accosted against their will and harmed by some ignorant fool taking his income under false pretenses, breach of public policy, breach of his fiduciary duty, breach of oath, breach of the public trust. Trust law is the highest law on the land, ladies and gentlemen. You want to get back to land, you want to get back to self-governance, then you need to get back into trust law. And that, my friends, is where the holy book comes into play, the King James 1611 Bible. If you know how to read this book, it will change your life to such a magnitude that you are literally untouchable short of murder. So
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If we are going forward in the courts with a criminal accusation against the bar associations,
you're in their courts. Why are you sleeping with the enemy trying to get relief from the enemy? That's absolutely asinine. Identify the man that's trespassed against you, and you can attach this title to him if you like. So John Doe Smith, who sometimes acts as
let me answer your question, because in their courts, they are subject to their statutes. Okay. If they do not perform to those statutes, then they can be held accountable. Am I correct?
Sure, if the judge sees it your way. But then again, let me repeat this. There are times statutes apply. And then again, Derek, there are times that the statutes don't apply. And I go, how am I to be able to identify when they apply and when they don't apply? Derek, I will tell you when they apply. All right, then. This doesn't seem like a sham at all. Judge, where are we located again? The state. And who's bringing the claim? The state of Nebraska. So I got another question. We're in the plaintiff. Are we near the rectum or the scrotum? Because it's really starting to smell funny in here. Huh? You just got to nail them, because these guys are witty. They're not stupid. I used to think judges are stupid. Ministerial administrators were stupid. No. They're running smart. A separate game on a separate game board. That's why the court is everything is had in a court, because it's a game and you're just bouncing the ball. And if you really want to be good at bouncing the ball, you have to be able to identify when they're trying to put the onus of probandi on you, and you have to be smart enough and intelligent. Well, let's leave out the word smart. Smart means painful, right? So you have to, well, maybe it applies here. You have to be smart enough to toss that onus of probandi, that ball, back in their court with who, what, where, when, why, how, right? And when you're asking those questions, so when did the state get hurt? What were their injuries? Where do they live? Do they have an EIN? Where's their DUNS number? Have they filled out a W-4 or W-2 in the last 6 years? Where's their place of employment? Where's their phone number? Where does Mr. and Mrs. Smith live? Has anybody had contact with them? And they want to go, well, you sound insane. We ought to take you to the mental insane asylum. Well, if you sit there silent by tacit acquiescence, you agree to go to the insane asylum. Everybody volunteers to go to jail. I used to think it was a crazy statement, but it's true. It's absolutely factual. So
they say the prisoner holds the keys to his own cell.
I absolutely had a chancellor tell me that. He ordered me to jail, and he looked at the sheriff and he says, "Sheriff, but he will have the keys to his cell." And so we get out the door, and the sheriff goes, I said, "Well, so what are you going to do?" He goes, "Well, I'm going to take you to jail." I said, "You going to give me the keys?" He goes, "No, I'm not going to give you the keys." I said, "You heard him with his own lips. He said, give him the keys to the cell." So I want the keys to the cell. He goes, "I'm not going to give you the keys to the cell." I said, "We better go back and talk to the judge then," because it was very clear. He told you to give me the key to the cell. Long story short, some friends came in and rescued me out of that situation with FRN notes, but it was imperative that they didn't come from me, right? But if I wanted to stress that, I could have had the sheriff drag me back into the court and have him clarify what he said, because according to my ears and the sheriff's ears, well, yeah, he said give you the keys, but that's insanity, Derek. I'm not going to give you the keys to the cell.
Right. But the reason that I asked you about going into their courts with an accusation against the Bar Association, that means that all members of the bar have a conflict of interest with you as a party, and therefore you have the right to choose your own counsel who is not an attorney for the bar.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And I've actually stepped into a court, and the judge called the name. They called for this Schaefer character, right? This person. And I stood up immediately and I walked up to the bar and I said, I am the trustee here to handle the affair. There are no facts in dispute. We waive all benefits without God. And I just need to know the debt due and owing, and to be assured that I will be availed, subrogated, right? My right of subrogation is standing in for the principal as trustee. That judge turned about 3 shades of white, looked at the prosecutor. They were just staring at each other. I said, if it would please the court, I'd be more than happy to speak to that gentleman. And when I said that gentleman, I was looking at the prosecutor, and she acknowledged the fact that I was looking at the prosecutor out in the hall. If it could expedite this matter and possibly provide remedy outside this court, allowing this court to continue with its daily fleecing. And he stood up and said, I'd like to talk to that man out in the hallway. And we get out there and he says, Derek, I wish you'd quit this shit. We're going to arrest you one of these days. And I'm just like, no, you're not. You got to actually find me guilty of some type of actual criminal activity. And all I'm in here doing is saving my fellow brothers and sisters, understanding that it's banking. And all I'm here to do is be availed as surety and exercise my right to subrogation. I'm just here to settle the debt, because under CFR 277211, all crimes are commercial. And because all crimes are commercial in this nature, everything is civil. So you're either going to have to bring forward the international contract that we entered into and expose what you've actually done, which they're never going to let that cat out of the bag, or you've got to discharge and offset these allegations. It's that simple.
And if we put you on the offense, you will be a battering ram.
Well,
you will be a battering ram.
Boom, boom.
Hey,
listen. Keep talking, gentlemen. I'm going to go AFK for a moment, so just keep it going because we're flowing in several groups. So.
All right. So, Derek, let me ask you a question. Because for my own case, for the gentleman in Virginia, for Ken's case, and for the class, the class of citizens,
citizens are all subjects, bud. Also, if you're a citizen, you're a subject. I don't care.
I'm talking about the class of people or persons or whatever you want to call them.
Sure.
Well, people who are the victims of these
that's the fiction. And if you want to attach yourself to the fiction, we pay for the sins of our fathers, right?
God damn it.
Grant the name to the court and be done with it. It's not yours. Let them play with it. Watch how they respond. When you say, I grant the name to the court, show a cause why this action shouldn't be handled sealed ex parte, for the beneficiary is known. I'm the beneficiary of this SDK trust, this constructive trust, this resulting trust from this guy fabricating a story here in this open court forum, which is really private, not public. See, the 12 presumptions of law come in handy really quick here. Have you heard the 12 presumptions of the law yet?
No.
Oh man, you're in for a treat. Hold on. Let me just pull this up. This thing is so beautiful. 1 second here. Let's do it this way. On the public side, it's quintessential. It's a must. You must rebut this right here. Okay, the 12 presumptions of court, canon 3228. A Roman court does not operate according to any true rule of law, all right, sound doctrines and principles, but by presumption of the law. Remember, contract creates the law, so equity follows the law. Therefore, if presumptions presented by the private bar guild are not rebutted, they become fact and are therefore said to stand true or as truth in commerce. All right. Law of merchants, mercantile. Therefore, there are 12 key presumptions asserted by the private bar guild, which, if unchallenged, stand true, being public record, public service, public oath, immunity, summons. All right. What do we do when we summons? We summons the dead, right? With Ouija boards. What did your grandma always tell you? Don't you play with demons. So when they send a summons, I know you ain't talking to this living soul protected by God and Jesus Christ dying for us. I know you ain't summoning this man here, right? Because you can only summons from the dead. Custody, court of guardians, court of trustees, government as executor beneficiary. Now let's talk about executor beneficiary. When I told you guys that trust law is the highest law on the land, there is no superior law in land, on land. It is trust law. And so when the government presumes and assumes to be the executor beneficiary of the constructive and resulting trust from their fraud, okay, and I stay away from the word fraud because it's commercial, but in all actuality, they've falsified a record, okay?
Yes.
So understanding trust is so important, and reading that Bible will help you see it. I've used this Bible in court, and I've had lawyers follow me out of the courtroom and go, "That's the most powerful book in the world." And I go, "I know it is." And it's just amazing to see the twinkle in their eye. Some of these older lawyers are for people standing up. They worry about the future, but they're stuck in a conundrum where not enough people are awake to stand. So not all of them are horrid.
And that is exactly my brainstorm over. Well, it's not brainstorm. We can say that's just the voice of reason, of creation, the truth of. Imagine all these homeless people writing, "I a man" or "I a woman" being trespassed.
Hey, look, law is simple, brother. If law is this complicated, how could anybody who is expected? You show me one agent and agency that knows all 66 million statutes, codes, laws, rules, city ordinances, and provisions. You show me one man that knows that. That's not law. That's a perversion of law. It's an impossibility. And when you create an impossibility out of necessity, I have to subvert from your religion and begin to self-educate, and not only that, self-govern at that point.
Derek, they think they're the homeless, the people that I do journalism with on the homeless sweeps and that's that business going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And they're taking them to get IDs.
Yeah, because it's big money. They can't charge up the estate without certain credentials.
Right. So I'm trying to, you try to show them, look, you're probably hurting them more than you're helping them. Sadly, because that's how they're going to get banked on, and there's testimony.
It's incredible.
Well, there's testimony from these people I have recorded, saying, look, they come in and they collect hundreds of people's information, and then they disappear. They're harvesting,
and it's sold.
Yeah, they're harvesting these legal names out on the street. But imagine,
sure, and then it's sold.
Imagine if 300 of them wrote trespass letters.
Right.
That just got
so check this out. Let's get back to the 12 presumptions of law, because this is so fundamentally important.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry.
This is the first document handwritten that goes into the court right away. This is the only thing I care about. Okay, the 12 presumptions: executor duties on tort, incompetence, and guilt. Definition of presumption, which is found in the Oxford Dictionary. Okay, I'm giving them the reference of where I am finding the material. Now, if they want to quantify and qualify their juxtaposition and show me how their dictionary is so much more superior to this one, then I still have to accept and consent to what dictionary they're using. So if they try to use Black's Law Dictionary, which is a book of black magic, spells, potions, if you will. Okay, it's verbal weaponry in the Black's Law Dictionary. Okay, its intent is to deceive and confuse, and that's why it's black magic. It's Black's Law. Okay. An idea that is taken to be true on the basis of probability. A presumption is a presumption on which must be agreed, right? Consent of the parties to be true. Then, and equally, if one party challenges the presumption to be true on the basis of probability, then this is all that is recognized to be required to remove the presumption is a formal challenge to that presumption. What are we doing by submitting the 12 presumptions of law? We are formally challenging the presumption that this matter of presumption is now decimated, right? We're now taking control of it. The presumption then has no standing or merit in material fact. A probability, which is also found in the Oxford Dictionary, is where we're referencing where we're getting our material, right? The extent to which something is probable, the likelihood of something happening or being the case. By definition, then this is not substantive, as it is only a probability. Is it probable that the state may bring an allegation against you? Yeah, it's probable. Do they really exist? Are they of flesh and blood? Do they make their own decisions, or are they a corporation? All right. So we're getting rid of the probability of what may be, and therefore no substance and material fact. If you can't pinch it and it doesn't say how, it's not real, right? And that's a poor analogy, because you can pinch a tree and it's never going to say anything, and it is very much real. A state court does not operate according to any true rule of law, but by presumption of law. Therefore, if presumption presented by the private bar guild are not rebutted, they become fact and are therefore said to stand true. There are 12 key presumptions asserted by the private bar guilds, which, if unchallenged, stand true, being public record, public service, public oath, immunity, summons, custody, court of guardians, court of trustees, government as executor beneficiary, agent and agency, incompetence, and guilt. The presumption of public record is that any matter brought before a state court is a matter for the public record, when in fact it is presumed by the members of the private bar guild that the matter is a private bar guild business matter. Unless openly rebuked and rejected by stating clearly the matter is to be on the public record, the matter remains a private bar guild matter completely under private bar guild rules. Now, justice.
But we don't consent to that.
You do consent if you don't rebuke, and it tells us in the Bible you must rebuke and lay the inequities of your fellow man at my feet, so I may rest my feet on their inequities. Okay, you have to come up out of them, because by default they're placing you in their realm as a volunteer for you. Look, I've had a judge ask me this: you got a driver's license? And I was like, yep. Good. We're going to go ahead and proceed. And I was like, what the hell just happened? Guess what I just did? I openly admitted to volunteering to be compliant with their system.
Yeah.
Now, I know how to respond to that question. Now, let me show you. Hold on. Let me show you how you properly assert yourself to that question, because I now know, and I've used it, and the judge went silent. Okay. Do you have a driver's license? Nope, the estate does. Do you have a birth certificate? Nope, the estate does. Do you have a social security card? Nope, the estate does. Well, who the hell are you? The beneficiary. Well, how do we prove that? I just said so. Any agent and agency in here going to say that I'm not? Any agent and agency going to lay claim to that estate? How about the constructive and resulting trust here? Anybody going to disclaim the trust? 63 Charlie Am jurisprudence 2D clearly outlines and states that all public officers, all public officials, are trustees of the people. You don't want to be got breaching trust law, do you? It's the most damning thing in the world to breach trust law. Ooh.
Now you got to be able to memorize that and be able to get that out to
this is why I say we need more people like Derek.
No.
All right, but hold on. Let's get through these.
People to do what he's saying. It's simple.
You just got to
the overcomplicated idea of going through their realm has been made impossible for a reason. Okay,
because you're not supposed to. Yeah, you're not licensed by the licensor as a licensee to do those things. Look, the Constitution doesn't say you have a right to an attorney, a right to a lawyer. It says you have a right to counsel, a learned man at law, in law, right? It doesn't say you have a right to a liar, but the court system at law will tell you have a right to an attorney. Well, you don't have a right to an attorney. You have a right to a learned man as elbow counsel.
Yep.
Some elbowed counsel over here in the what's rated as the worst county in the nation by some of older researchers.
At law, I could have you sign over a power of attorney. I can go in there not being an attorney. Well, I'm actually a qualified attorney. Well, who licensed you? Well, I believe I'm 001 at this point. John Doe Smith, am I the first one you've ever given power of attorney to represent you? Yes, as a matter of fact, there you are, Judge. I was licensed by the licensor as a licensee to represent John Doe Smith, and it came from the horse's mouth. What more do you need? Well, you're not licensed by the Supreme Court. Well, who licensed the licensor? to be a licensee? And how did they get that power? And do you see how the ball of worms just starts to come out?
How you like
you
his
start to ask
ball?
questions.
How you like his tarball? His tarball.
They are screwed.
I love it. I love it. But now, if you get a really nasty bunch of court officers, the first thing the prosecutor is going to turn around is
you're fired. It's that simple. You're fired.
Practicing law and license. And that's happened. I've seen cases where that's happened to private prosecutors or to people who are representing someone who are not attorneys.
So then it comes to this: only a tyrant, only a brute disregards sound doctrines and principles. And to clearly articulate that even better,
violent take it by force.
Exactly. A brute who is blatant disregard for the law will oftentimes show his tyrannical behavior by way of force. When they can't get you to believe what they need you to believe, which is a lack of knowledge, ladies and gentlemen, then they automatically turn to force. And you want to know how you stop that? Quid pro quo is in order. If you're going to tase, pepper spray, and beat me, then I suggest the man that gave you the order is also tased, pepper sprayed, and beaten.
Yes.
Well, wait a minute. I'm going to redact that from the record because, see, here's the deal. They tried to send me one time to a loony bin, and I would have a blast in a loony bin. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I love people, and the crazier you are, the more fun I have. And so I looked at the judge and I said, he says, well, I think you need 3 days in the mental health facility. And I said, as long as a quid pro quo is in order. He goes, excuse me? I said, you heard me. As long as a quid pro quo is in order and you're coming with me. And because I understand contract law at law, if you understand the contract law, you can bind them with a quid pro quo. But the trick is you have to be savvy. You can't be quiet. You can't be mute. You can't be mute. You have to speak.
Derek, I definitely need to give you power of attorney. I'm emotionally involved. They left my family, my pregnant, soulmate on the side of the road.
No, you don't need to give me power of attorney. What you need to do is submit your 12 presumptions of the law handwritten into the court and get them to respond. When they don't respond, see, I handle everything outside of their venue.
Can you share
look,
that? Do you have a breakdown on the 12 presumptions that you share?
I do.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
I would still love you to come down, man, just because I wouldn't want to be the guy holding the camera being told you can't film. That's all.
Can I send this to your email?
Maybe done all video now because they're all closed down over there real quick.
Hold on. Well, and that's the other thing that we're coming into problems with. And this is a reality that needs to be known, is that now they're using Zoom, right, to hold court. And they're getting people to admit to being the name, and then they're just muting them out and not allowing them to speak after that. And so
because it's all about the name.
There's 3 trial de novos that are going on right now that I know of based upon that alone. And I'm sure they're going to say, oh, we had technical errors, we had issues. But here's the thing. When you use Zoom and you send documentation, it's recorded. So it's quite the platform. And if they're not going to allow you to speak, then you need to start submitting stuff into the chat that they can't say they didn't have knowledge of. So you can use this 12 presumptions of law. I much prefer to handwrite everything. And here's why. When we look at Joseph Story, Pomeroy, Gibson, and we start to get into the inner workings of what they're saying, a handwritten document supersedes anything that is typed or printed. And the reason for that in law is that only a man can scribe and write. You're leaving your impression, your soul upon the paper. It is undeniable. The state can only print. The state can never write by hand. And that is how you're showing the distinct difference between a man and a corporation. If the state wouldn't mind actually handwriting their bill of particulars, it'd be greatly appreciated. State of Nebraska, Mr. and Mrs. State of Nebraska, if they wouldn't mind handwriting that, it would be greatly appreciated. And I'll wait an eternity to see their response.
Truly been blessed. And blessing us
and
all
just
right
think
now.
about it. I invoke the 6th Amendment without saying I'm invoking the 6th Amendment. All right. I'm not challenging jurisdiction by saying I'm challenging jurisdiction. I'm just challenging jurisdiction by the way I move. That's it. Ain't nothing special about it. Now you can go in there like I'm challenging jurisdiction because I know you don't have any. Well, he who makes the claim has the burden of proof. Good luck proving the negative. You can't prove the negative. And that's where they got everybody. So what you do is you simply put the onus of probandi back on them. How did you get jurisdiction? When did you get it? Why do you have it? Who gave it to you? How did they get it? You see what I'm saying? You could spend
like
a day,
like a child asking questions. Yeah, like that.
Oh, and they hate it because they cannot overcome it. See, it's not enough for him to just say, I have jurisdiction. It must be proven on and for the record, which means I must consent to it, which means you have to have the facts and evidence that you rely upon to make this presumption. Otherwise, I rebuke this presumption that you have jurisdiction. We can't possibly move forward. In the legal sense, we're looking at an estoppel. In the lawful sense and equity, we're looking at an injunction.
Boom.
What jurisdiction do you want to play in? The commercial, military, admiralty law? Sure, then bring the international contract that I'm in breach of, because this is a civil matter at this point, and you're alleging that somehow I'm obligated to follow your statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, and regulations all at the same time, not getting paid for it. I don't mind abiding by your statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, and regulations, but damn it, I am not going to be a willing participant of involuntary servitude. You can kiss my ass and pay me.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. We
pay me.
We fully
or we can go
this.
to the exclusive jurisdiction of equity, where everybody's rights are protected, and the state of Nebraska has no rights because they're insolvent. They have no sovereignty. They're a corporation. Get out of here with that nonsense. That means that everything that is created rightfully belongs back to the source, which is I, the living man. The energy is the gold, ladies and gentlemen. The energy is your gold. The life source energy is what moves the machine, and without us, they fail. It doesn't say go out there and have wanton disregard for your fellow man's life by drinking and driving. I think it's absolutely stupid to drink and drive. But at the same time, if you have had a few cocktails and you are on your way home and you have harmed nobody and you get accosted against your will, are we basing the fact that law is built on probabilities? Because if that's the case, we're all guilty. Nobody leave your bed tomorrow morning because somebody might accidentally kill somebody. And in the name of safety, we shall all stay home and in bed tomorrow. How does that make any sense?
I do see the catch-22 there. I mean, and it really is a catch-22.
So, but here we go. Here we go. Legally, it's a wanton disregard for another man's life. And you get busted 2, 3, 4 times for DUI. But he might go 100 years in his life and never have an accident. So are we thought policing now? Are we putting people in prison, which are for-profit corporations at this point, for debt notes and credits on account and securities and bonds and dividends and derivatives, hediments, general tangibles, intangibles? Okay. When you understand the monetary system and really see the insanity that's going on, okay, due to our lack of freaking knowledge.
Yeah,
it's what it boils down to. So I'm not opposed to the 14th Amendment and using that as what did you call it? A 14th Amendment audit. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to it. There are many ways to skin this cat. I'm just not comfortable invoking their rules, city ordinances, and placating to their system when I operate by the highest system, which is trust.
Right. Now, my mentor, his argument, because he acknowledges exactly what you're saying.
Absolutely.
By doing that, we are basically consenting to jurisdiction. We're consenting to the use of their statutes.
That's right.
He said that in the art of war, Sun Tzu said, take the most direct route to victory.
You bet.
Don't build a new road. Use the roads that your opponent has already built. And he said that when he first started doing this, that he tried to go into these more deep mechanisms like what you're invoking, but he said that he found it to be much more expeditious and much more difficult for them to argue an attrition by simply using what is in the statutes, because it is there for them to abide.
Right, but the law again was not written for a righteous man. And let me tell you this, your heart tells you the difference between right and wrong. So let me get this. A homeless man who can't read a book isn't able to affirm the law? Are we led to believe that if you cannot read, you will never know the law? That it's not, in fact, written on your heart at all?
Well, that's part of the tactic and strategy that the bar uses.
Right. And that's why I use trust law, because it's written on our hearts already. I never knew that my parents in the community I was raised in raised me to be equitable. I never knew that was the name for what they were doing and instilling in me. Equity is beautiful. It's right or it's wrong. There is no gray area. In legal land, there's murder 1, murder 2, homicide, negligent homicide, right? But in law, it's just murder. If there was ill will, malice, and intent, it's murder. I don't care how you dice it up, and murder is wrong. See, in legal land, murder is also wrong, but then you have homicide, murder one, murder two, right? Justification, if you will.
Well, this is why I think you would be the ideal private prosecutor to go after the court officers and even the jury members.
What I'm talking about is the conflict of variance between the law of equity and the at-law rules.
Well, you know all the cases where we see videos of cops shooting people in cold blood and then walking scot-free, or they even get paid vacation.
And you know what? If I went over to Iraq tomorrow and unloaded on a 14-year-old kid carrying an AK-47, the first question they would ask me before they put me in Leavenworth was, did he engage you? Well, no, he was walking with a gun. It was pointed my direction. I wasn't going to wait until he fired, so I shot. You killed a 14-year-old boy that didn't engage you, and now you're going to prison for the rest of your life for murder because you are a private mercenary. You don't actually work for the United States government. You're not actually a military personnel. You are a private subcontractor who has entered into contract, and you are 100% liable for your actions. They dissolve all liability. That's correct.
Can y'all hear
That's
this?
correct.
Can y'all hear this? Listen.
Yeah.
Listen.
So now cops.
Can you hear?
Same
can
thing.
You hear this? Can you hear what's going on?
Cops.
No,
cops.
I can't hear something that if you're playing
quiet
something, we can't hear it.
Quiet for a minute.
I'm not hearing anything.
Okay, I got
you can't hear me?
Military chopper right over me.
Anyway, the police force is the same thing. They're private mercenary contractors for a principal acting as trustee to bolster the profits or the lack thereof, because they're just creating securities, negotiable instruments that are being monetized. And then, of course, they're not reporting it to the IRS because they're futures. It's not money yet. Okay. It's not credits on account yet until they put the mechanism into place. And that's why they're hiding all this. The judiciary, if you will, is a $10 trillion a year credit on account generator, and nobody talks about it. Forbes top 500 business is really the judiciary, and nobody talks about it.
That's a fact.
They're the reaper of the souls, the harvester of the energy, and they're creating these negotiable instruments in a false and fictitious monetary system that will never go away, by the way. I don't ever see it going away, but it will metamorph. It will change into something very sinister very shortly when they look to move to go exclusive digital, which is pretty much where we are now, but there's still 1/8 of the U.S. Federal Reserve notes are still in currency, physically tangible, right? So that allows for a free market that isn't really controlled by government, if you will, which is really a corporation. See, the government, the alleged government, would lead you to believe that marijuana is horrible, yet, and in fact needed to be made illegal, when in truth, the pharmaceutical companies, through lobbyists, line the pockets of politicians. They came up with some blasphemous reason for it to be made illegal, which was it made black men want to rape white women, which is just an atrocity in itself.
Yeah, it's ludicrous.
Slanderous to a degree that
that was the second. Insane. That was the second drug they needed.
But hold on.
It was cocaine.
They made it illegal because they had figured out a way to chemically alter it and make it their own. And now they wanted to sell their product for profit and deny God, through God, his remedies that he's already provided. There's a reason that doctors can't use the word cure. They're forbidden from using the word cure because that's not what they're in the business of. They're in the business of generating profits. All right. How many doctors actually know what's in the pill that they're prescribing you? Very, very, very few of them. They all talk to pharmacists. And the pharmacists are the ones that say, well, chemically, the guy's blood and everything, his enzymes will digest this just fine. Chemically, they're making the connection between the man's body and the pharmaceutical pill, right? Which is a chemically laden product designed to alter God's grand design. Everything you need in this life is here and on the planet already. And the lobbyists and the government are making it illegal for profit. Let's just be honest. There would be no need for 66 million statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, regulations, and provisions if for nothing else than to generate profit by people's ignorance. You see, because 99.9 98% of people out there are good by nature. And to prove that, we don't have an officer walking with little Susan, little Tommy, little Johnny every day because they're good by nature. There's not enough cops out there to do that anyway. So it's just a racketeering scheme. Yeah. It's a RICO scheme when you see through it all.
But there you go.
I'll yield the floor.
Well, Beyond. So, yeah. The next question is what is the next step? And, and what my mentor taught me was that, you have to have some kind of door kicker. If you're going to go after these big picture issues, you've got to have a door kicker. And, I think using Ken and mine and the gentleman in Virginia and Mr. Timms, and there's another case that was heard in the Supreme Court, I think it was out of Seattle, where, they're doing exactly that.
Hold on, let me interrupt. I want to use Derek's case because I want to know why I'm being treated differently.
Well, here's the thing. We have immediate unmet needs, of victims of crime. And the catalyst, the stimulus for these crimes were committed by agents for the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and the bar associations. And they're being carried out by agents for the Blue Wall of Silence. And there was an extensive investigation. I want to say it was done in New York and Chicago, and I want to say it was done in the 70s, where federal investigators actually established the fact that a private criminal organization occupies law enforcement seats. And, every single law enforcement officer has taken that oath. Now, we can get into discussions about oaths and all that, but I don't want to do that. They have a duty to act. And there's certain things they can and cannot do. And when they act outside of their mandates from the statutes, well, they act in their personal capacity. An officer does not have jurisdiction merely because he deems it so. And he does so at his own peril. And with that being said, and our understanding of what agent and agency is, well, now it's time for us to follow that chain of unlawful command and go right up it and and call them out. And the thing about the bar associations and the Democrats and Republicans, who I will just refer to as the authoritarian party from this point forth, the authoritarian party with the bar association, they abrogated the citizens' right to privately prosecute in the courts. And that is an ancient power and right. I've actually got that from the court's mouth. So, and that's why it still exists in Texas. And Texas is the last state where you can go right directly to the grand jury and request indictments. Idaho is the next best state. You have to go before a magistrate prior so that the magistrate can assess, well, is there in fact evidence that a crime has been committed?
Yeah, but a grand jury of what? A grand jury of who?
Of our peers.
That's going to be a tough one, ain't it, Derek?
Yeah, and I know.
And the reason that it's tough is because of the dogma that is believed amongst society. I once had a judge tell me one time, in society, when one man speaks, the other man yields the floor. And I looked at her and I said, I agree with that. I'll enter into that contract and we'll be both bound by that. 5 minutes later, she interrupts me and I said, didn't you just say in society it's typically common that when one man speaks, the other one yields the floor, and we both agreed to that contract? Now you're in breach of contract, which is in fact, what do they like to hammer us for? They like to hammer us for contempt of court. And I said, well, that is contempt of court. Well, she knew that I could prove contempt of court because we entered into a verbal contract, and to breach that contract is in fact contempt because we had a court going, right? Her and I had an agreement, an accord, playing a game, and there were rules to that game that were established, and she agreed, and she's in breach. So once you learn the game, it's so easy to stand as a man and just put your boot up their ass. It's not hard, but it takes a lot of balls, a lot of bravado to stand up. The enforcement comes through you. If I ask you, is it Bian? Is that how you say your name?
What now? Blaine.
No, he's just citizen
Blaine.
X, man.
Blaine, if I ask you this, what's the highest
Blaine
court?
Samaritano means good Samaritan.
No.
in
This ain't
Spanish.
Zan, man. That Zan John was who we were on.
No. That's cool. I just wanted to be able to identify him because I wanted to speak directly to him.
Citizen X is who he wants to be.
Buan, okay. What is the highest court in the land, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, you just schooled me on the fact that it is me.
There you go. Yep. You are the highest court.
Yes. Every individual judges. So I would agree with that.
Now, do you understand why?
Well, because the law or good morals originate from the man.
Right. And no agent and agency can testify with firsthand knowledge of anything of fact, substance, and material fact, right?
Because they are fictitious.
Right. They are manufacturing crimes. And when I say manufacturing, it tells you exactly what they're involved in. Commerce, commercial. They're manufacturing.
Right.
They're presuming and assuming that you belong to their society. So I look at this judge and I said, well, that's funny because your society and my society are two different societies. And I know this to be true because your society practices the undoing of God's law and my society practices upholding law. Excuse me, I didn't use the word practicing. And I said, my society believes in upholding the law. The law has already been firmly established.
Right.
It's written in the good book. The 10 commandments are all you need. And the real one is do no harm. Love yourself as you love thy neighbor. And the problem with this society that I see now is everybody's forgotten how to love themselves. They're so gluttonous. They fall part of the 7 deadly sins. Look at the women that take 5,000 photos of themselves a day. How vain, how vain can you be?
That? Yeah.
You know? So, but continue on because I'm learning just as much from you as I'm sure you're learning from me. And this is how we do it, ladies.
I cannot claim to be the author of the strategy. This was taught to me. I am just repeating it back. Now, in my several years of reading law, I have, found things that I have added into it. Coining the term 14th Amendment audit, I coined that term. Nobody told me that word. So basically the deal is that, the strategy in a nutshell is that you go to report a crime. You bait an official to violate their qualified immunity. You report that crime to the next higher authority having jurisdiction until you get to the grand jury. Okay. Now, we learned this. This was first used during and shortly after the Civil War, because after the truce was called, we still had thousands of KKK members and Confederates and white supremacists and slavers holding public offices, all the way from your beat cops all the way up to governors. So the federal government had to figure out a way, well, how do we get these people out of office without rekindling the war? And that's when the first of the Three-Force Act, which later came to be known as the KKK Act. It really does not have anything to do with the KKK, but the reason they call it the KKK is because the KKK was the criminal organization operating within government seats that these statutes were targeting.
Via the Federal Reserve, via Edward Mandell House, who appointed the original Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, who was actually Grand Master House over the Texas KKK. That's a historical.
Well, we're going to get to modern Ku Klux Klan members, and we're going to tie it in.
How about we just remove
the interagency collusion between the Republican Party and the Ku Klux Klan, because
hold on though. Wait a minute. Let me provide some clarity here. Okay. Why are you talking about a title that can be attached to no man? Why are we
talking about interagency collusion? We are talking
okay,
about
so then let's talk about Bob Mueller. Let's not talk about the FBI. The FBI is an inanimate object on paper and paper alone. It can do no wrong because why?
Right. Okay, so
all right, so let's address the man who sometimes acts as the executive chairman for the FBI, right?
Yeah,
that's how we do things.
I hear you, and I understand what you're saying, and I'm not arguing with your point. But what I am saying is that there are statutes that require the registration of seditious organizations. And that is what our goal is, because when we can show in court and in record and with court decisions that, yes, in fact, the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, at the very least, the Unified Bar Associations, and the Blue Wall of Silence are in fact domestic enemies, the Democratic and Republican Party must be removed from the ballots because their agents cannot hold public office. That is the goal. That is what we are after.
Except they have a right to do what they are doing because we are volunteering to participate in their artifice and scheme. And all men are responsible for knowing the contracts they enter into.
And then I argue,
going after their organization, they have a right to do what they're doing. And that's why I go into trust law to hold them accountable.
Let me interject here for one moment. The problem with this is we have plenty of research and irrefutable evidence of forcing the birth certificates into play, the CUSIP numbers, the entire attachment to the securities. That operation is now done by force, and under statute they call law to report the event regardless of getting names, regardless of information, informants, consent, yada, yada, yada. I mean, the whole thing about the way babies are brought in is key to really eliminating their power structure in the manner in which it's used. It attaches itself to every man, woman, and child, every American. I mean, this is very powerful information for everyone. And then share this out. You know, I'll always have a backup on it.
So what the most important thing to do in law is due process of law. Okay. And unanimously across the board in every country, due process of law doesn't necessarily exist, but the concept is there, and everything is a concept. Due process of law is notice and opportunity. If I brought a claim, like the prosecuting attorney brings a claim, into one of their forums or venues, it would be denied for a frivolous claim for which relief could not be granted. Why? Because I did not swear to the pleadings. The DA can never swear to the pleadings because they're bringing the pleading under a false and fictitious entity, an unregistered assumed business name in the commercial venue and realm. They're pretending to be you. Okay. And they're suing the debtor. You are the creditor. They need you to come in and be trustee and stand in as surety. Surety means they're going to take your ass to jail. Yeah. That's what it means. You're the asset. So your ass will set in jail. It's right there in your face. All you have to do is remove the presumptions and assumptions, clear the chessboard, and start square.
Let me ask this real quick while we're talking about this. When you hold on just a second. When you do the assumption and presumption handwritten, how are you delivering it to everyone? How are they receiving it?
I always use the highest court and authority in the land, and I use the post office, not the United States Postal Service, the post office, and I articulate that on my envelopes. See, the post office, the postmaster general holds about 7 different hats, okay, because it's all trust law. Everything is a trust. Going to the doctor is a trust relationship. Having a joint bank account with your esposa, your wife, your significant other is a trust relationship, okay? Everything. Dropping your kids off at school is a trust relationship. If you can express the trust and you can get the ministerial administrator to admit the trust, it's over. Pretty much shut your mouth at that point, because it doesn't matter what the lying, looting, pandering lawyer is about to spew out of his mouth. He can't prove a damn thing. And he now becomes the trustee because the judge don't want to be the trustee. Judge has got important things to do. And they went through an extensive amount of training to ensure that the public coffers were adjusted and the books were balanced as bankers. That's what they're supposed to be doing, is administering the national debt. The bankruptcy. That's their job. Who does the national debt belong to? It belongs to the people of America who are missing. They haven't provided notice and opportunity to the Secret Service, the Department of State, the DOD, the DOJ, and said, hey, I'm alive, I'm well, Where's my inheritance? Where's my estate? Who's the chief master accountant who is over the estate doing a full accounting, making sure that the public and private are not caused any harm, injury, damage, and loss, and that all books are at the balance of zero. They're zeroed out. And that the dividends, derivatives, hediments, tangibles, general intangibles, right, are all given back to the beneficiary. And better yet, given back to the estate. And then I just want to know who the trustee is from this point forward that will handle all the accounting affairs for the estate on behalf of the beneficiary. It's either licensed by the licensor as a licensee as brokers, ladies and gentlemen. They're administering the national debt. And they're whisking away your credits on account, and they're putting it in their private retirement funds.
This is why, look, I looked into the FDCPA, and of course, once it was created, they quickly exempted themselves from it. And the only loophole we're seeing is if they're operating as a third-party debt collector, in other words, using another name to collect a debt, which it would appear as though they are, because if I'm saying I'm the ABC,
they are because they're always going through agency. They absolutely are.
Yeah, they say I'm the They say I'm the ABC County Sheriff, or I'm the ABC Police. They're using another name that won't jive with their DUNS number. Is my point. I'll be precise about it. So you're going to see
and that's why you ask for their W-7, their W-8, their W-9s, their EIN number, and you hammer them that way on the commercial side. You have, like earlier was mentioned, the art of war. It's very important to study both aspects of this. Very, very important.
How you like them now, man?
And that's why I enjoy Beyond's and I know I'm probably saying that wrong, but his commentary on
listen, Derek, he's told me read Art of War like 100 times. He says I don't even want to talk to someone that hasn't read or know the Art of War.
Well, I only know the Art of War because I've been at war my entire life.
Principles of strategy. If you don't have strategy, it doesn't matter that you know all the laws.
Right.
You've got to apply those principles of strategy. And it's so true.
And that's why I say it's a chess game. And at selfgovernanceu.com, there's a hidden message that a lot of Masons probably pick up on, a lot of educated people pick up on, but it's a chessboard. Everything that deals with Self-Governance U and my website are in the symbolism is it's chess pieces. And I want to ask you this. What is the most important piece on a chessboard?
The pawn.
Why is that? I'm impressed that you got that correct, because most people say the queen. Some people
I play chess.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason that it's the pawn is because the pawn can be anything and all at once be nothing. Okay. Yeah. That's free will, ladies and gentlemen. It's an amazing thing, right? And we are considered pawns in their chess game, okay, in the judiciary. And the pawn is so powerful. Once he sees his shadow and realizes that he's the king, and as king, he's asking pertinent, relevant questions that must be answered. When the king says, "It is my wish that you build a moat around my castle," do you think people stand around with their thumb up their ass?
No.
No. Because what happens if you stand around with your thumb up your ass after I, as king, I'm asking, "It is my wish that a moat be built"? That's a command, or your head will frickin' roll, because you're a public trustee and you're going to do your job, or I will remove you from that position. All right. Yep. You belong flipping burgers at Burger King if you are not going to do your fiduciary duty and obligation, and they're going to be found in breach of public trust, taking your income under false pretense, which is unjust enrichment. All right.
Yeah.
My job is to freely get this out there, gentlemen. Look, you will be a fiction in their fairy tale like Pinocchio trying to be a real boy.
That's right. That's a fact. And I just sent you the 12 presumptions of law. You can put that up on your screen if you want. Share it with everybody.
Let me see.
It's extraordinarily important.
Well, either way, I'd like to see your handwritten one by the man. If this is a breakdown that you have typed out,
it's actually, this was actually found in
okay, here's a question.
Was it Cornell Law?
The clerk won't take your handwritten stuff, but you're mailing it out.
That's because you're not holding her accountable. Hold on, wait.
What are you doing when you can't find the address? I'm gonna fill in the gap.
Are you saying the clerk, if you walk it in there,
where do we get the address? Where do
openly?
What address are you sending your handwritten 12 presumptions?
Oh, I deal with most everybody I deal with out of Washington, D.C. Why? Because everything else is a subsidiary corporation of Washington, D.C. So I'm telling them to get a hold of their hellhounds, or I'm going to get a hold of them by their short and curlies, and you're going to hear the blood-curdling screams from clear out here in what would be known as Nebraska. I promise you they'll be yelping so damn loud when I get a hold of them. And this isn't violence, ladies and gentlemen. Look, do I have tactical defense tools? Absolutely. Everybody should. Okay. It's a great equalizer for a 90-pound woman against a 250-pound man. Everybody should have the ability to do those things and know how to use it. Okay. I don't use the word firearm because that's a federally defined term, and I don't agree or consent to the way that it's utilized to limit my unalienable rights. So you can kick rocks with that theory that somehow the federal government, which really isn't a government at all, has come up with some vernacular and vocabulary that I'm bound by. Okay. It only applies if I agree, and I don't consent to it. So kick rocks, get out of here. It's my tactical defense tools. I'll use them as I see fit, and there are no limitations, right? Because I'm a lawful man, and the law, again, was not written for a righteous man. Now, just because I'm righteous doesn't mean I'm free from sin, devoid of fault. You know, of course I have fault. Of course I'm a sinner, right? But I, as a man, I'm going to do my very best every day to provide remedy to anybody that I cause harm, injury, damage, or loss to. And I, as a man, have a great responsibility. This is why most people walk away from the private side, by the way, is because it comes with a great amount of obligations, responsibility, and duty. Okay. This is why most people beg to be U.S. citizens, because they don't want those obligations. They don't want those responsibilities because it's work. And most people are lazy. That's the truth. Freedom is not free. It never has been free. It never will be free. Freedom is nothing more than a concept, but it's a concept that I myself am worth and willing to die for. Give me liberty or give me death. Truer words could have never been spoken, right? And you have to understand at the time what the forefathers were going through. You got to put it back into time period correct atmosphere and realize they were being oppressed to such a magnitude that these wealthy men who could have kicked their feet up for the rest of their life and lived out their days decided to take a stand and walk away from what they had done. It's essentially what, if Donald Trump pulls it off, which I don't think he will, but it's essentially what Donald Trump would be doing if he snubbed his nose at the bankers and said, look, we're going to create our own currency now. We're done with you. We're going to create non-interest bearing currency that the United States, the American people, the United States of America is going to utilize from this point forward. Now, one of the reasons I say that it's similar is because Donald Trump would unwittingly be giving up his fortune at that point that the bankers helped him create. Okay. So when we walked away from England, we had to create our own means of exchange, didn't we? We had to create our own currency in order to be recognized internationally to do any kind of commerce, right?
Well, I'm in here on only a mic. So you could share that through Facebook. I love using Facebook.
Yeah, I don't.
I was going to ask you guys, do you either of y'all have a website where you can post a repository of documents and pleading templates?
I'll get your email from you, and you can actually send me your email.
Well, it's not for my benefit alone, but I'm talking about for the audience, where the audience can go to a repository free of charge and just get pleadings and amici briefs, things they can use in their cases. Because Ken was exactly right when he said, we need to get as many people doing this as we can.
Right. Again, you're dealing with the legal.
That's my end. That's why you're talking to Derek. This is my end because okay. Listen, there will be folks out there that will take everything Derek said and put it on paper because they're they have that talent. So that's I want the listeners out there. That look, if you're hearing what he's saying and you're hearing the response, what needs to be done is we need this type of knowledge and instruction.
It's even written in statute. A handwritten pleading supersedes a typed or printed pleading. It's even in statute. You can find that.
Well, and I agree with that, and I'm not arguing that. But for the layperson who does not have the wealth of knowledge and skill that people like us have.
Yeah, but we're playing in a different realm. You and I are juxtapositioned back and forth between public and private, which can never mix. We're running two courts simultaneously right now, and both the information
and
that
actually, when we go
excellent.
forward under the RICO and KKK Act, there are intermingling criminal and civil matters at issue.
Right. Yep.
So, and that's where, it's important. You sound like you got the civil down to.
Well, civil is all contract, and everything is contract after we walked away from our own form of currency. Okay, gold-backed currency. So here's the truth. There's only two realms. There's martial law, which is at law, public side, public venue, which is Roman civil equity, Roman civil maxims. Because remember, the public side is always going to be envious of equity. Equity is what should be done shall be done. Equity sees that that no wrong shall go without remedy. Equity also sees that if you have 25% interest in something by right, your rights will be upheld, where I won't get 100% of the principal. I will only get 3/4 of the principal, because your right to your quarter of the principal will be protected. That's what's so beautiful about the exclusive jurisdiction of equity, is because it's black and it's white. Now, let me show you this. Justice. The symbolism for justice is a woman who holds a saber in one hand, blindfolded, and a scale in the other. She can hear no evidence and she can see no facts. Who wants to be in that type of venue? Now, equity, ladies and gentlemen, is so gorgeous. Not only can she see the evidence, she can hear the facts. Not only that, but she's cognitive to disregard the form and rather look intently upon the substance. All right. Whereas at law looks at the form and it's all procedures, it's military, it's DOD. Okay. And equity looks at the substance. So even if I misspell the word, they look at it and go, I know what he's talking about. And equity disregards the form and looks at the intent and the substance.
Right.
At law, if I sell you a gold bar and you core into it and you find out it's all full of lead, but it's got a really pretty gold coloring, that's at law. In equity, they say, well, you said you sold him a gold bar. We've drilled into it, and we're not only looking at the substance, we're disregarding the form, because although it looks like a gold bar, we want to know what the substance is. We want to know what the intent is. We want to know what's right, what's just, what's fair, what's equal. We drill into the gold bar in equity and we go, this is full of lead. You run an artifice and a scheme causing this man harm, injury, damage, and loss by way of trespass, whether it be deception, willful intent to defraud, right? Which is a commercial thing. But that's what I
got 4 words for you.
Yeah.
Criminal breach of contract.
Yes. What contract? Prove the contract. Show me the contract.
Well,
how does it apply to you?
If one exists and it violates a law to not uphold the contract in the manner that you breached it, well, then it's a crime.
Right. But we both agree there must be a contract in play, right?
Right. So, and that contract can be implied. It can be implied simply by the exercise of it.
Contracts can be created through action. And I'll give you a brief example. If you put FRNs, or credits on account, in an escrow in the attempt to buy property or real estate, I can show that your intent through your action was to agree to said contract. Right? Whether you sign the contract or not, it doesn't matter. It was your actions that created the trust relationship.
Yeah.
You can also create it verbally, and you can also create it in written form. Now, when transferring real estate and property, it is always imperative that you bring forward everything transfers in written form when dealing with real estate and property. Guess what else transfers in written form? Your rights. Your rights. Okay, because rights are property. So how do you get into equity? Equity will never disregard a claim brought pertaining to property. So everything in equity is a property issue, because without rights, there are no property, and without property, there are no rights. Everything is a property. So if they've taken my offspring, those offspring are my property. The RNA, the DNA, the blood, everything that courses through their veins is mine. So say it, the good father who allowed me to sire my offspring, right? Didn't birth children. Okay. They're talking commercial terms, the birthing of a ship through a canal. I'm talking about the miracle of life where my offspring were crowned as they came out. They were crowned. The doctor goes, he's crowning. A new king is born. Whether or not that king will ever take his throne and his rightful heir, because only God creates an heir. And whether or not that young man will ever take his rightful place to the throne and his heir, his inheritance, his title as man, is really up to him and his family, whether or not they're going to teach him the law and show him the trust.
Well, I'll say this. I am truly humbled by your knowledge and skill. Okay. But I'm going to say something here. And I just want you to roll with it. Okay. Everything we do in communication with any other human in every circumstance is manipulation. Okay. And one of the most effective strategies in war is distraction and dissuasion. And when I started talking about bringing down the Republican and Democratic parties as criminal organizations, and I made the connection with the Republican Party and the Ku Klux Klan, the subject was changed. Okay? Understand that my objective is exactly what I said it was, and that is to have the Democratic and Republican parties removed from the ballots for being the criminal organizations that they are. Okay. I think you would probably be one of, if not the best private prosecutor I have ever come across, because you do understand the game. You do see the veil and you see through it. One of the biggest problems that I see a lot of freedom fighters face, and even common people who are victims of colorable crime, is that they get overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information that they have to manage. And this was something that my mentor had to drill into my head, that I needed to streamline my strategy. Sun Tzu said that a long and drawn out war has never been attributed to wisdom. And it's true. And, and that was my mentor's rationale for why he decided just to go ahead and use their courts and use their criminal statutes, hold them to their duties to act, and then prosecute them and remove them from office and have them put in jail when they violate their qualified immunity because they did not perform a duty. So with all of that being said, we can sit here for the next year and we can study and educate. But also in the art of war, the best leader is the one who leads by example. Okay. So that means, as far as we're concerned, we are those generals, we are those field commanders, we are those drill sergeants who teach and who give example of how to be successful, how to be victorious. And with that being said, you may get into a situation where you're conducting or you're actually prosecuting a 14th Amendment audit, and you may be confronted. This is one of my fears. My fear is that I'm going to be presented with some of these deeper concepts of law that are actually fact, okay, that you've pointed out today that I don't know what to do with, okay?
Let me show you some more cool ones. I'd love to show you the maxims of law. Would you like to hear those?
Yes, I very much would, and I understand what the maxims are. But all of that. This is what my mentor told me. He's like, all of these principles that we discuss on these forums, like we're doing now.
Hey, hold on.
They are already addressed in the statutes.
Can I get you
everything? The maxims of law are reflected in the de facto statute.
Yeah, okay, but let me ask you this. Let me ask you this question.
Go ahead, Jared.
Hold on. I want
the maxims. Well, I want the listeners to be able to know what we're talking about.
Sure. And I'm agreeing with everything that he's saying, by the way. I'm not in argument or anything with what he's saying. I just want to stress and identify the two jurisdictions that we're speaking of, because it's so imperative. It's
civil
absolutely
versus criminal.
Well, no, that's at law. Civil versus criminal is still at law.
Okay.
The trespass, which is causing a harm, is on the lawful side in equity. Okay, and law is so unbelievably simplistic that all men know the law. Now, let me show you how. For example, legal and lawful. In lawful, it is unlawful to murder someone, and in legal, it is also illegal to murder someone. Okay. So that is the time where I agree that legal and lawful run concurrent, and I acknowledge and accept that fact. Okay. That's man trying to play God by manipulation of language, basically saying the same thing. All right. Now, I agree with you that the maxims are exhibited within the statutory realm. Most often they pervert it with their language, the manipulation of language. So you have to be able to read between the lines to comprehend that legal and lawful are in harmony. Now, it tells you in the UCC that if ever the UCC should be in conflict with lawful, you must plead the conflict of variances between the laws and show of cause why you shouldn't move in a different jurisdiction due to that conflict of interest. Okay.
Right.
So that's very important. And again, I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying. You're spot on with the at law version of this.
And I would even argue that, and I have actually done, started building the case for this, where the authoritarian party and the Bar Association are guilty of subversion.
Okay, but hold on a second. Wait 1 second.
Of the statutory system into a what is called a subversion incubator. And they have used words in statutes as artifices of subversion.
So I just want to point out what realm you're operating in. That's the at-law fictional realm, where you have to have an entity to move. You have to have a game piece on the board. Okay. And that's the importance of authenticating your birth certificate, state and federal, moving it into the United States of America. Most people go to Canada, Thailand, Taiwan, all these other foreign countries. Authenticate that birth certificate for the United States of America. All right. Because the United States and the United States of America are two separate, distinct entities, period. All right.
Yeah.
Now, in the UCC, when we adopt a record under UCC 9-102 is the definitions, and it says to authenticate a record. And I'm just doing this off the top of my head, but to authenticate a record is to adopt a record. And the only way that you can adopt a record is if it is abandoned. Okay. And it clearly is abandoned because nobody's laid claim to it yet. Now, that birth certificate is actually a bailment certificate. Okay. And that makes you the bailor because you are the life source energy. Now, when we look at the doctrine of merger of titles, it's called the doctrine of merger. And we look and we see through trust law how this is actually working. We realize that we have to not only hold equitable title, but legal title as grantee absolute. And once in that position, we can collapse the trust, zero out the accounts. Okay. What they did was they created a constructive trust based upon the fictitious monetary system, upheld with the, no, it's not fraud necessarily. And this is why I say that it's not fraud is because there is remedy. And it took a very brilliant, articulate man who's researched law for a long time, put himself through law school. He was disgusted by the fact that he was drawn into one of their courts and the judge said, you're incompetent to handle your own affairs. And thus we're going to appoint an attorney to you. And he was just dumbfounded. I mean, this guy has flown jets. He's extremely articulate. He's brutally intelligent. I would never want or wish for him to bring a claim against me. It would be a nightmare. And he is efficient. Okay. And he told me, Derek, it's not fraud. You keep saying fraud and I want to help you. And I said, well, how's it not fraud? He goes, because there's remedy. And if there's remedy, it can never be fraud. And he says, and if you participate in the fraud doesn't vitiate fraud. In fact, if you participate in it, now you're a willful volunteer of it and you're subjected to it.
Wow.
So he said, just
using the statutes.
That's right.
Let me
they told Rod Class in Washington, D.C., the prosecuting attorney for the United States looked at Rod Class and said, you didn't win. And he goes, what? And he said, you're still a criminal. What did he mean by that? He's using a false and fictitious name that's not his.
Beat the charge, but you're still guilty of the crime.
Right. He used their statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, and regulations. He wasn't licensed by the licensor as a licensee to do so. He was still actively being a criminal, using private copywritten material to his to prevail. And in that, and in that, he's an enemy belligerent combatant of the United States. He's using their stuff, but more so than anything, equity comes in and saves Rod Class at the end of it. The justice comes in and says, okay, well, he's pretty much beat you on paper. You're not gonna overcome him because I have a duty to protect the public and not let the cat out of the bag. That's how Rod Class prevailed.
They never would post it on Pacer.
That's right. So remember, everything is contract. When in the courtroom, they're always, I can tell that a judge is making an offer. His lips are moving, and I pay very close attention. Like that judge that said, Derek, I think you need 3 days in the mental health facility. I said, yeah, as long as a quid pro quo is in order, you tell Martha you're coming with me. Tell her not to make you soup for the next 3 days because we're going to be at the Looney Bin. Woo! It's going to be a party. And I said, look, I'm thinking in my head, I'm going, shit, this is going to be great. Anything they're about to inject in my veins, they have to inject in his veins first. I get the option of seeing whether he was gone full retard because of what they've stuck in his veins. And then I have the option of not doing it and participating. I'm going to have a blast in the Looney Bin and he's going to be miserable. You know what he says to me? Well, I think I'm of sane sound mind. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm going, well, I know I'm of sane sound mind. Who the fuck sounds crazy now? Wow. Right. And he goes, moving on. And I go, wait a minute. You don't want to talk about going to the Looney Bin? Nope, we're moving on. And so he completely redacts that. He doesn't redact it from the record. He just says moving on. That's no longer an issue because I realize that we're in contract land. And if he's going to make an offer to me, I'm going to do a conditional acceptance without saying I'm doing a conditional acceptance and just say, as long as a quid pro quo is in order and you're coming with me. That ended that contract immediately. See, a contract by definition has to be mutually beneficial for all parties involved, and not only by definition, but by practice, by principle and sound doctrine. It must be mutually beneficial for all parties involved. Full disclosure must be had. Everybody must ascend to the mind in order for it to be a valid, upholdable contract. And contract can be created verbally, expressed, or in written form. And so all I did was simply take his offer to contract and reverse it on him and say, hey, let's go to Looney Bin. I'm down. Shit, who doesn't want to party with the crazies for a weekend? Are you kidding me? They probably got better drugs than they got on the street, right? Let's go party. So, once you realize that every time the judge opens his mouth, he's just making an offer to contract and you can do a conditional acceptance, you will find that it's wonderful. They tried to give me 10 years in prison. And I looked at him and I said, you know what? Screw it. Let's just quit with all the semantics. Let's just say I did this thing. Let's just say I'm guilty. Let's just say that I owe the debt. I will conditionally accept the offer, provided that you write a check for $25 million today. 20 of it is allocated to my daughter to make sure that she's safe and taken care of for the rest of her life. And then you give me 5 after I do the 10-year sentence. Do you think they moved forward and prosecuted me on that?
No.
Why?
Because they don't want to have to fucking answer for where the hell all that money went.
That's right. They're gambling with the public coffers, ladies and gentlemen, using your ignorance, and they're banking on you being inefficient, not knowing who you are. And that's why that good book is so important. When you read that Bible, oh man, I can't tell you how powerful this is. I recently spoke to a man that I'd done some work for before in the past. He owns his own company and stuff. And he stopped by and we were talking about this book. And he goes, the thing is, you're not just talking about a book, Derek. That is the word of God.
That's right.
And I was like, you know what? Derek, you're 100% spot on.
You don't need a website or a microphone, brother. You need a congregation.
But I agree with what.
That's funny you said that, Ken, because I was just thinking that Derek is giving us a sermon.
This is Sunday school. Nothing happens by accident.
I'm not a priest. I'm not.
Brother, listen, I love you, man. And I've been watching this a long time, Derek. And look, let's give it like this, Derek. All the guys out there. No. Let's put the cape on here. and don't get it stuck in no propeller. The child support, you ain't got a driver's license, guys out there that are just living in their cars and not knowing what to do. Derek, hit it.
So very simply, you want to be able to point out the contracts because everything is contract in the commercial world. And I have taken the time to go through Amin Osiris's teachings. He's brilliant. He proclaims to be the God of law. And it was very interesting listening to his podcast and his broadcast. He is showing you the conflict of interest between the Bar Association, the Attorney General, the Secretary of State, the governor, and the lower municipalities and the court system, as well as the sheriff. They're all taking and unjustly enriching themselves on a war on your family. Now, I'm not advocating that you don't take care of your offspring. That's not what I'm saying at all. You made them in private, keep them in private, right? That's what Amin Osiris tells us. And we start looking at that and evaluating what he's meaning. And what it means is there is no parental hand guide book to tell you how to raise your offspring. And let's be honest, when my mother was being raised, they would have never dreamed of taking a gun to school and shooting fellow students. Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah. They would have been going through the wall for even thinking about it. Their mom or dad would have laid the whoop down on them. All right. And I'm not opposed to corporal punishment at all. I've had it exhibited on me, and it probably, quite frankly, could have been used a little more, I suspect. There were a number of things that I got away with in my life that I shouldn't have. But what was important about it is mankind never learns from anything that isn't painful. If it's joyous and it's enjoyable, most often, I'll put it like this. I've never learned from a fight that I won. I've never learned from a fight that I've won, but I have learned from fights where I've had to lick my wounds. Ooh, that hurt. I think I'll duck next time. Maybe I'll dodge. Maybe I'll weave a little more. Maybe I'll dance instead of standing flat-footed and just taking a pounding, right?
So let's shut down the local child support oppression. Some guys need a license.
It's very easy.
Some guys need a license for commercial. So they need it all shut down. Let's shut that down real simple. Go ahead.
Right. And again, can you have a license and still operate in your private household consumer good absent of the statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, regulations, and provisions? Absolutely, you can. There's a time that you are operating through an entity to engage in commerce. And then there's a time that you're just merely going to the grocery store to get yourself some groceries. It's not a commercial activity. It's at a necessity that you travel using the highways, byways, freeways, and common roadways to do your private affairs, right? And Article 1, Section 10 doesn't grant us any authority, but clearly outlines and shows us that the government can encroach on our unalienable rights and authority to do so at will, freely of our own exercise, right? Provided that we're not causing harm, injury, damage, or loss to any other, right? Very simple. So what the Washington, D.C. actually has control over is important to understand. And that's lot, block, parcel ID number, and easement. But where did they get the easement from? Ladies and gentlemen, we, the American people, gave them the easement by our silence. We can take back our easements anytime we want. They don't own the roads. See, but one of the first questions I ask in court when it's a traffic violation is, who owns the roads? How did they get it? Where did they get it? When did they buy it? You know, it's like the United States saying, well, we have the United States of America. We own it. Well, how did you get it? Who did you pay for it? When did they buy it? When did they decide to sell it? How much did they sell it for? Right? Well, the Indians didn't sell land because they understood that they didn't own the land, that Mother Earth belonged to Mother Earth and Mother Earth alone. And we were to take care of her, for she takes care of us.
Native Americans.
Native Americans, Indians. I get what you're saying. I'm just putting it out there because technically we're all native. You have a place of nativity. I was never born. I have a place of nativity. I was crowned on a certain landmass that's been called many things throughout the centuries, right? I mean, the prehistoric caveman might have called this land, right? Mm-hmm. Were they wrong? Mm-hmm. That's just the way they chose to identify. That's how they created a society. We're on, we're going to do some today, right?
Yep.
The people native here called it Turtle Island at one point. Nobody mentions that. Where are the maps of the native territories, right? You don't see those in your government funded books, right? I don't want to talk about that. How about the fact that the Hispanic, Mexican, mestizo people owned a great majority from almost Oregon all the way down to Texas? We don't talk about any of that. But the truth of the matter is, you have to self-govern. You have to be able to stand for yourself. These tyrants will run over you until you stand up and put them on notice. And you put them on notice by saying, I, a man, am here on this land, exercising my unalienable rights to come and go as I see fit, freely in my pursuit of happiness. Right? And I do not wish to be accosted by gun-toting morons with an IQ of less than 70. You send the top dog agent to come down and talk to me, because I don't mess around with janitors. Not diminishing the man or woman who's a janitor, because I wasn't raised that way. I don't care if you're the janitor or CEO. I'm diminishing the futilism of fictions. Okay, get rid of the title. Instead of President Donald Trump, he's just Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump does something that causes me harm, injury, damage, or loss, I will be dealing with Donald Trump. No other person, right? No other fiction. I'm going to be dealing with the man.
Every man and woman who's a member of the Democratic and Republican Party, not the party. Not the title.
Bingo. That's what I was trying to get. Amen.
Decided they wanted to be a part of this in this
That's right. Yeah. Because the title can't hurt you. The United States of America can never hurt you. A police officer can never hurt you. The sheriff can never hurt you. The state patrol can never hurt you. The governor of a state can never hurt you. You're in a constant state of confusion. See, when the cop not too long ago at the DMV asked me, where do you live? I pointed at my chest. I said, I live within here. That's it. We're done talking. Why? Because I'm not in a state of confusion. I'm in a state of superiority. I know who I am, and I know what you can and cannot do. And I'm going to hold you 100% liable for your insurrectious behavior leading to rebellion. See, because I'm not an enemy belligerent combatant of the United States. I'm not a United States citizen. I'm not a volunteer, and I'm not a damn employee. So when you come at me, you better come correctly. If you use a false and fictitious misleading name that's not registered under the Secretary of State's office to bring a claim against I am going to smoke you on that.
Right.
Well, congregation, Derek, because we need to teach.
And when you go into a court, I want to stress this: there are only two ways to prevail. Two. Listen very carefully. Agreeing with thy adversary quickly, for the sheriff will scoop you up, and the judge will surely place you in jail. There are no facts in dispute, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Because at law, there are never any facts that are heard, and there is never any evidence that is seen. It's all manufactured crimes. Okay? So I agree with the adversary. I agree there are no facts in dispute. I waive all benefits without God. What am I telling them? I waive all man-made created benefits. I am not part of your system. I am not subject to your system. I am not a volunteer to your system. Well, you got a driver's license? No, the estate does. You got a birth certificate? No, the estate does. Why? Because he who creates is master. If I didn't create it, it ain't mine. Why would I lay claim to something that I didn't create that isn't mine? But I do see a trust relationship for which I may be a beneficiary of. Is there anybody in here that says that I'm not the beneficiary today? Well, no agent and agency is going to testify, because he who affirms bears the burden of proof. So if he says, no, you're a trustee, great. I suspect that you can prove that, right? I need a finding of facts and conclusion of law, how you've made that determination, which is nothing more than an opinion that I have to consent and agree to. And absent the fact that there's no injured party here, well, I must be the co-beneficiary of this said claim then. I damn sure am not the trustee and surety unless you're going to allow me to exercise my right of subrogation. I'll stand in a surety, absolutely. I want these books balanced to zero. I want my rights, titles, interest, dividends, derivatives, debentures, hediments, general tangibles, general intangibles, trust residue, trust residuals. I want my chattels and securities brought back to me immediately.
And the judge
show
is
a cause
crying.
Why they shouldn't be done.
And the judge
oh shit, he's running. He's running. And I look at the judge and say, Judge, hey, you ain't got nothing to worry about. You work for me. So who's the trustee here? Just go ahead and appoint him. So the beneficiary can be made whole, the balance of the books can be zero, and nobody's harmed in the public or the private.
Now get him to the Supreme Court quickly.
Oh, they don't want to go to the Supreme Court, and I don't want to be at the Supreme Court anyway. Who knows this? What Supreme Court is the highest court on the land?
Postal?
As far as Supreme Courts go.
Well, the Post?
Where is the highest Supreme Court on the land?
Pennsylvania?
It is Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Why?
It's where it originated. So
yep.
Article 3 court left, right?
Well, you can invoke Article 3 courts anywhere you go. I've done it in a lower district court. Gotcha. It's just a matter of you moving the court. Well, it's very simple. Pleading the conflict of the variance between the laws of equity and the rules of their statutory program. Show a cause why this shouldn't be sealed in ex parte and handled in the exclusive jurisdiction of equity using Gibson's 1 through 60, chapters 1 through 60, second volume. Because now we're going into the exclusive jurisdiction of equity based upon the highest law of the land, which is trust, which what should be done shall be done. It's not, it might be done. It will be done. Remember, their first oath is to God. So help them God. They're supposed to be administering the grace of our Heavenly Father, unless we know not who we are and we act as heathens, enemy, belligerent combatants that know not the law. Now we're subject to their jurisdiction, because the Pope in 1306 made the unum sanctum, saying that none of us were competent enough to handle our own affairs. And in the absence of God, the Pope would rule as king. Right?
So a counter offer to like, blah, 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 you blah, blah, blah. They've already kidnapped you, let's say. Blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
Your bail is $6,000. You would want to counter them with I agree to that. Well, I will agree to that for $50 million a day. Or, let's.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. They'll walk away from it. There you go. Once they realize you know how to operate in commerce and you know that you're not going to work for free, they will shift gears really quick on you. And they'll come up with some excuse for doing a continuance. And 2 days later, you'll see a dismissal in the mail. Now, in the event that you don't get a dismissal, make sure to step out in the hallway and write it down on paper and come back into the venue and submit it onto the record. Here's my offer to contract. I'm willing to contract with any gun-toting moron in here alleging that I did something that somehow caused their fictitious imaginary friend harm, damage, injury, and loss. And by the way, my fictitious entity also has caused harm, injury, duress, and stress as well. Tinkerbell and Peter Pan are with me in my suit today. Think about how asinine it is.
Standing. You just you slaughtered their standing.
Yeah.
Slaughtered it.
So I have a question, all right? And it's pretty straightforward. If you were going to go in the courts and make an accusation against the Democratic and Republican Party agents and the agents for the Bar Association for having abrogated...
Hold on. Can I get you to do a hard stop real quick? Right. I want you to see the pronouns you're using that mean absolutely jack dick.
Jack dick.
And you're intelligent enough to pick this up.
Understand the people I am referring to.
Right. You need.
Do you understand the agencies that I am referring to?
I do, but again, the agency is a fictitious entity that can do nothing. It exists on paper and paper alone, and the only one that can hurt that entity is a man going in there to the records with a flaming torch and burning them. That's it. And that would be destruction of property.
Okay, so just bear with me for a minute here.
Mm-hmm.
If you were going to go in and reestablish the citizens' right to privately prosecute in all courts.
Citizens don't have rights, they're subject. Citizens don't have rights, they're subjects. I, as a man, come in holding.
So based on that logic, you're saying that you're not willing to devise a strategy so that the people, the masters of the government, can hold them accountable.
Well, no, what I'm saying is I move differently in a court where true justice is had, not blind justice, but open-eyed equity is had.
Okay, I'm open to whatever strategy you can lay out. I'm open to whatever strategy. Step one.
I like your strategy too, but here's the thing: you give them the ability to presume and assume, and that's dangerous.
Make yourself a target.
That's dangerous. No. Look, you're using false and fictitious entities for which you're not authorized to use. Remember, our pleadings are always supposed to be true and correct. We're not supposed to be perjuring ourselves. Have you met?
Wait a minute.
You made yourself a target like Rod Class did.
Hold on.
Yeah, the Supreme Court has ruled that the statutes are the property of the people.
Okay, does the Supreme Court show me
an exclusive ownership over them?
How many times has the Supreme Court, the body of politic, the 8 or 9 members, ever agreed wholeheartedly on one subject matter? Ever?
Well, never.
Okay, so is it safe to assess the situation and say that if 9 men can't agree that something is law, that it probably isn't law?
Well, I can tell you that if they overturned that, they would be going against what Donald Trump did.
Well, look. I can get all 9 justices to agree on one fact and one fact alone. I know I can because it's indisputable. Murder is innately wrong and against the law. And I know that all 9 justices would sit there and go, absolutely. Right?
Right.
In a lot of these cases that go before the Supreme Court, you'll have 3 to 4 decisions, 4 to 4 decisions with a deciding factor. You never have unanimously across the board where 9 people who are highly learned. I'm not trying to, throw off the fact that these people aren't intelligent. They are very intelligent. Okay. But it's very seldom that you will ever see that everybody unanimously agrees. So why would I allow these people who can't all agree on something dictate how my life should be based upon 4 to 3 decisions or 3 to 4 decisions? Isn't that asinine?
Well, aren't we presuming that, the whatever justices you might be in front of will not agree with what the prior decisions of the courts have been?
And that's why you move into equity and you use that good book, because you can't argue with these maxims. Now, let me tell you something.
But the problem of moving into equity, and this is the problem that I have with 42-1983 and 42-1986, action for neglect to prevent. What it basically does is it allows private citizens, victims of crime, to erroneously and via their own ignorance allow official criminals, people who are committing crimes from within government offices, to escape criminal sentencing. It allows them not only to do that, but to convert the taxpayers' money into the private property of the convict, for which the convict uses that unlawfully attained and converted money into their own personal property, and then they pay their fines with it.
You're talking about Title 18, 1661, piracy on the land.
Ooh, thank you. So we are back to what I was saying earlier about statutory system subversion. And it's like a lot of the cases that I've built up in preparation, I am using statutes as exhibits.
Right.
But here's where I would exhibits to show that these people are abusing their offices. They're making invidious statutes. They're making subversive statutes that subvert every fundamental principle that we hold dear.
Would it not be better, instead of using the title, statute, and code, to use the words verbatim within and not reference the code at all? Make it your own. See, the words that you're articulating are brilliant, no doubt. And if you would just remove the title from them and just use the words verbatim, because it's sound doctrine you're relying upon. The maximums are within.
My understanding is that when you cite something in a court pleading, you must include the citation. Where can it be referenced? So how do we reference these without using the titles? And I think that
you simply ask the question: is there an agent and agency present today, or a man or woman present today, that will argue to the contrary? Yes or no? And they must swear in under the pains and penalties of perjury and affirm where they find their facts and supporting evidence.
So you bait them to identify the source.
Or simply prove that it's not so. See, it's my law. It's the law common to I, nobody else. My law is, if I want to go out tomorrow and burn a mason jar full of gasoline, is provided that I'm not harming anybody else, I'm going to go do it. Look, we allegedly live in one of the freest societies in the world, right? Which is a joke. Let me tell you this. You go over to Sweden, you can walk around with a glass full of beer and enjoy the outdoors and the heavenly creations, right? Try doing that in America and tell me you're free. In Afghanistan, a 14-year-old young boy can walk around with a fully automatic AK-47, and yet we're led to believe that our intelligence is superior to theirs, right? Yet they seem to be more free in being able to do the things they wish to do, provided so long they're not harming anybody else. The truth of the matter is that there are many countries found without law but there are no countries found without maxims. Okay. And you have to be able to comprehend that there are maxims. There are thousands. I've got books that have 13,000 maxims in them. And I got so excited, I started reading them. And I called my buddy James up and I go, James, I'm so excited. Check out these maxims. They're self-evident. They need no proving. They've existed for thousands of years. They come right out of the Bible in most instances. And he got excited for me. He goes, you're starting to see it. I go, oh, I'm starting to see it. I don't know. I have fun. He goes, I knew as soon as you would start to see what's really going on, you're so intelligent that you would start having fun with it. And the way that I have fun with it is by pulling George Carlin moments in the courtroom.
You're blessed. You're blessed.
And so let me tell you, when I speak about the maximums, there are 20 of them. Can every man remember 20 maxims? Absolutely. Can you remember 66 million statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, regulations, maxims that simulate equity, but they're only equitable by characteristic, right?
Right.
So look at this. Here they come. Equity, the 20 maxims. Equity sees that as done what ought to be done. That means that if you have 25% interest in the property or the business arrangement, that I can't come in and steal 100% of it. Okay. Equity will come in and make sure that your 25% is protected. Everything is divided the way it should be. I get my 3/4, you get your 25%. So equity sees that as done what ought to be done, right? Equity will not volunteer, if you will, a wrong to be without a remedy. Okay. Equity delights in equality. Number 4, one who seeks equity must do equity. Now, what's doing equity? What's do in equity? DUE in equity.
Doing the right thing.
Right, which is what? Notice and opportunity.
You're not willing to give.
Hold on, it's called exactly, and it's called notice and opportunity. Dear neighbor, your dog has been shitting in my yard. I didn't sign up for this. You owe me for my lawn care service. Who's been picking up turds and charging me $50 a turd? Here's the bill. Right? I'm giving them notice and opportunity to rectify their property that's causing my property damage. Right?
Right.
And I've given them notice and opportunity. Now, if I skip giving them notice and opportunity, then I skip doing equity. I skip handling my affair on the private side, and I went directly to the court. The court is now going to say, well, did you give him notice of the damage that was caused by his property to your property? Well, no, I didn't. Okay, this claim is a frivolous claim for which relief cannot be granted because you did not follow due process of law. Okay. Right. The magistrates, all they're looking at is the process because it's a military organization. And if you've ever been in the military or have military family members, they will quickly tell you that everything is procedure. It's a lockout, tag out procedure to ensure performance and efficiency, which they're not very efficient. Long story. Anyway, when you realize what clean hands doctrine is, it's doing the right thing and giving proper notice and opportunity. Okay. Because on the private side, we should always presume and assume that our fellow man is honest and integrate and seeks to do the right thing. And we've got to afford them that before we move forward with a compensation per se, right? Now, number 5, equity aids, which assists the vigilant. All right. What does that mean? Well, if you've ever heard the adage, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any rights, it's 100% spot on. How could you expect to uphold something you know nothing about, right? So you have to dig within yourself. And this is why I promote self-governance, because ultimately the republic is you and you alone. When you go through your trials by fire, ice, and water, you will go through those trials alone. Ask me how I know that. I've been there a number of times in a courtroom. Those trials right there are very spiritual, and nobody else in the courtroom matters at all. Okay. So equity aids assist the vigilant, not those who slumber on their rights. Number 6, equity imputes an intent to fulfill an obligation. Now, this is what happens in chambers in camera. Now, at the public venue, you have in chambers. Okay. At law, there's also an in chambers because why? The public side is envious of equity. And so often, because of its envy, it mirrors or simulates equity, but it's only equitable by characteristic. It's not equitable by nature. So in camera, in chambers is where you want to be. Number 7, equity acts in personam, right? Through an entity. Now, In equity, the exclusive jurisdiction equity in chambers, it's mano y mano. It's man on man. Okay. That's why the prosecuting attorney cannot talk or speak in camera in chambers. He cannot testify with firsthand knowledge of any facts at all. Everything he is doing is to produce a play, to produce charges. Now, if I order a cheeseburger, what do I have an obligation to do after I order the cheeseburger? Well, I have to fulfill an obligation, don't I? And that obligation comes with the form of payment, right? For which they choose whether or not they're going to accept my form of payment. If I use ruples at a United States of America McDonald's, they might not take the ruples. They might request dollars, right? Federal Reserve notes more commonly. And that is that's their right to choose how to do business in that fashion, right? So when we look at that, after I make payment, what else am I entitled to? The receipt. And the receipt is proof of the excise tax being paid for the goods, right? So when they're bringing charges against you, they're actually supposed to independently bond those charges with a hazard bond, which means that if they, by manufacturing a charge against you, can't prove or make you fall for being the surety of those charges, then they have to make you whole, right? It's your right to subrogation, but they never have that. So when we're talking about due process of law, if they're going to bring a pleading, first of all, the pleading must be sworn to under the pains and penalties of perjury. That's statutory. It's never done that way, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Because the state is no more real than Kris Kringle, the Easter Bunny, or the Tooth Fairy. Okay? The state is nothing more than a figment of your imagination. They can't create the independent hazard bond that's supposed to be attached to it in order to create a warrant. So what they do is they convert it through unlawful conversion into a capias. It's not a true warrant. A true warrant has an affidavit sworn to under the pains and penalties of perjury, articulating the injured party, when it happened, where it happened, how it happened, right? And the damage that was caused. And then it has an independent bond attached to it stating that, if I have made a falsified claim, this bond shall be released to said defendant. The defendant should always have that hazard bond in his possession held in escrow. How many of you have gone to court and the prosecutor goes, oh, by the way, here's your hazard bond here. I want you to have this. And, you can contact a lawyer who can put this into escrow for you to ensure that if we can't prove our claim, you get paid. They never do that, do they?
No.
Nope. So again, not a lawful court. I don't want to be in that. It has nothing to do with lawful. It has everything to do with legal, which is the undoing of God's law through deception and trickery, through unfair, deceptive trade practices, trying to get me into enter into a contract with them. All right.
Right.
So number 7, equity acts in personam. Number 8, equity arbors a forfeiture. Okay. Number 9, equity does not require an idle gesture. Number 10, he who comes into equity must absolutely come with clean hands. And I want you guys to go review the clean hands doctrine. Judge Judy announced it on her television show one day, and I hit the floor. I couldn't believe it. I fell backwards in my seat. It was like, oh my gosh, she's letting a cat out of the bag. Number 11, equity delights to do justice and not by way of halves. Number 12, equity will take jurisdiction to avoid a multiplicity of suits. So when I tell you that multiple jurisdictions can run multiple courts simultaneously, this is where equity is so beautiful. It turns around and it completely shuts down the at-law side and absorbs every controversy pertaining to the subject matter to avoid a multiplicity of suits being twice put in jeopardy or danger, right? Number 13, equity follows the law. Now, you've heard me say this before. Contract creates the law and equity follows the law. Thus, the maximum of law that no man is excused from knowing the law or absent from being punished by the law, for all men are responsible for knowing the law they enter into, right? Number 14, equity will not aid a volunteer. If you volunteer, ladies and gentlemen, to be surety as trustee for their private Ponzi scheme, well, equity is not going to come in and save you after the fact. But jurisdiction, again, can be challenged at any time. So you were a volunteer at first, and then you realize the Ponzi scheme played upon you, and you now come up and you're challenging jurisdiction. That can be done before sentencing, after sentencing, during the procedure. It doesn't really matter. That's where equity is so beautiful.
But not by saying, I challenge jurisdiction.
Right.
Let's
Correct.
be clear
It
about
does
this,
nothing.
because that's what you're. I don't want the listeners to get confused, because
Right.
you said that earlier.
How you assert yourself in challenging jurisdictions is by using your 6 best friends: who, what, when, where, how, and why. Okay, that's challenging jurisdiction. And remember, when a magistrate sits on a bench and says, I have jurisdiction over in personam jurisdiction and I have subject matter jurisdiction, remember, just because he says something, he's just making an offer to contract. I need a finding of facts and conclusion of law. It must be established on the record. I need to see it in written form with your signature applied to it, because I know the difference between general liability and personal liability. And it seems that you're making a claim, and I need you to prove your claim at this point. If you can't prove your claim, then we are bound by a contractual nexus that your slanderous ways in breach of public policy, breach of your fiduciary duty, breach of the oath of office is now causing I, a man, harm by false and misleading deceptive trade practices, trying to get me to enter into a contract to be a surety for something you guys created to unjustly enrich yourself with.
And now, my fellow man and women listeners, this is why they do not want this man in their ballpark.
Yeah.
Look, I'm nothing special, guys. I'm not a messiah.
You are special. But what's special is,
a dangerous man.
You're sharing what you're sharing right now, and it's going to be able to share, because, man, I'm going to bust this wide open, right?
It's just common sense, guys. And unfortunately, in the 21st century, common sense isn't very common anymore. So let's move on. 15, where equities are equal, the law will prevail. The contract will prevail, okay? This is so beautiful about the fluidity of equity. When equal equities are at hand here, then they say, wait a minute, equity says we must go back to the contract. And if the contract is valid because there was full disclosure, it was mutually beneficial for all parties involved. Now we have a breach of the contract, and we're going to rely on the contract, and whatever the contract says, we will do for all men are responsible for knowing the contracts they enter into. All right. So this is when your equities are equal. Then equity turns around and says, okay, well then the contract, the law shall prevail. Now, number 16. Between equal equities, the first in order of time shall prevail, meaning the first man to bring forward his timely claim in equity shall prevail, provided that the contract is void or has an issue with it, and we can't go off of the contract because it wasn't mutually beneficial or something wasn't disclosed. Then we're going to go between the equal equities of the intent rather than the form. Equity disregards the form and looks at the intent, the substance. So instead of getting blind-eyed justice that can't see or hear evidence, now you're an open-eyed equity that can not only see the evidence, can hear the facts, and distinguish the difference between form and intent, which is gorgeous. All right. It's the grace of our Heavenly Father that is supposed to be administered. Now, number 17, equity will not complete an imperfect gift. So when we're talking about your property, your real estate, your property and real estate under the colorable title known as a warranty deed, a grant deed, a special grant deed. These are all imperfect gifts because you didn't acknowledge and accept them as a grantee and put it on the record. And because of that, the grantor, the property and real estate, always reverts back to the grantor under color of title. That's trust law 101. Okay. If the grantor give you something, yet ye deny it, then it is not yours. And the good Lord in the Holy Book told us that we have dominion over the earth. Claim it. Men make claims. Agents and agency make complaints. I'm not part of their system. All right. So if there's a man or woman making a claim in here today, I'd sure love to make them whole, because as a righteous man, I have an obligation to provide remedy. All right. So if there's a man or woman saying that I cause them harm through ill will or just blatant vagrants or whatever the case may be, let them come forward now, because I, as a righteous man, have a duty and obligation from my Heavenly Father to take care of my brothers and sisters and make sure they're made whole. There's nobody that can do that in that courtroom when the state's bringing a claim. All right. Number 18, equity will not allow statute to be used as a cloak for fraud. Now, 18 is a little tricky because it delves into the commercial side by using the word fraud, and fraud is a commercial term. But it's important to understand that statute is often used as a cloak to unjustly enrich themselves. You violated such and such statute in the city of such and such city and state of such and such confusion, and thus you owe us. Well, who was the injured party? I missed that part. When did I sign up for the military to be subject to your statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, and regulations? I, as a man, have one duty and obligation. That's to love my neighbor as I love myself, and to not trespass on anybody for any reason. Everything is attributed to a trespass, and everything is a theft. Murder is theft of life. You know, utilizing somebody else's possession without their permission is theft of that possession, which is a trespass by way of theft, causing you harm, whether it be mental anguish, trespass by way of coercion, by theft. It always boils down to being a theft, okay? Theft of your unalienable rights and freedom, not liberty, because liberty is permission to leave the ship, okay? And admiralty. 19, equity will not allow a trust to fail for want of a trustee. This is one of my favorites. Amen. Hallelujah. This is the cat's meow. Equity will not allow a trust to fail for want of a trustee, which means that a trust, a constructive or resulting trust, can be created at any time. The beneficiary doesn't have to know they're the beneficiary, and the trustee doesn't have to know they're the trustee. So when we look at and jurisprudence 63 Charlie 2D, and it says that all public officers are in fact the trustees of the American people, of the people, ladies and gentlemen. You asking the judge, do you disclaim the trust? It's like asking him if he still beats his wife. Either way he answers, he's screwed. If he says, no, I don't beat my wife anymore, well, then he admits to beating her in the past, right? But if he says, yeah, I still beat my wife, well, now you're admitting to a crime, right? So we're asking him if he disclaims the trust. Judge, do you see the trust? And the second he sees the trust, it is all over, ladies and gentlemen. Now it's just a matter of finding...
Would that be something that?
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. And it changed. Yeah. And then when he says, what are you talking about? You just need to explain the conflict of variance between the law of trust and the rules of their bylaws, statutes, codes, provisions, and city ordinances. There's a clear conflict of interest. One follows God's law, and the other one was written for the unrighteous man by the Pharisees of Rome.
Bingo.
Yeah. Number 20. Equity regards the beneficiary as the true owner. So you're the plaintiff. You're not the defendant. You're actually the co-plaintiff. And the prosecutor is pretending to be the beneficiary, but really you're the beneficiary. You can never be the defendant and you can never be the plaintiff, okay? These are fictional things in a fictional realm, and he who creates is master. However, you are the beneficiary of it. Okay. And then 21 is a quasi maximum. He who occasioned the loss must bear the burden. And that's why when the prosecuting attorney loses his case and he has to dismiss with prejudice,
burden of proof.
Right. He now bears the burden of breaking out his wallet and paying because he gambled with the public trust and he got caught. He's got to save face by providing remedy. Okay. Now, recently we allegedly lost a case, all right, but we didn't lose the case because we knew on the back end that we could come and get them. So I never chalked it up as a loss. It was more of an experiment. And they had accosted this woman against her will for failure to produce a driver's license, no registration, no tags, and no insurance. Now, I took her to court in a van with no insurance, no registration, no plates. And we drove right past all the cops, honked the horn at the front of the door. We were so excited to be there. I had two ladies with me, and they were all just like, oh, we're going to jail. I'm like, we ain't going nowhere. Watch this. Now, I had shown her some things and she had studied it upon her own, and she had come to me the day before court and presented her findings. And I said, you got it. You're nailing it. So let's go and stick to it. Don't become an enemy belligerent combatant. Okay. You lost the court case and now are due to provide remedy. But the problem is they left you to presume and assume what the remedy is because they never actually told you what the numbers mean. Numbers don't say anything. Numbers are just numbers, remember? And then putting a symbol in front of it doesn't mean anything either, unless we all agree to what the symbolism is. So we go into the court, and the prosecutor, I walk in with my cup of coffee and my cell phone, and right on the door, there's big symbolism saying you can't have this, you can't have that, but it's not written in English, so it doesn't apply to me. And I walk in, and the prosecutor, I said, good morning, Tammy. That's the name of the judge, her first name. I always address these people by their names because I'm removing title. They're no more special than I am. And they're just a man and a woman, and they're hell bent they're to uphold God's grace. And I know this to be true. It's just, there's no question in my mind. And I walk in and I said, "Good morning, Tammy." The prosecutor turns around and goes, "Oh my gosh, who is this guy talking to the judge like this?" And he turns around and he goes, "Oh, it's Derek. And he's got a cup of coffee." Like a little tattletale in first grade, telling the teacher, "Oh my gosh, he got a cup of coffee." And I almost thought to myself, "Hey, do you want one? I'll go get you one." And then I remembered he's barred from being able to do those things because the sign on the door he must abide by. It doesn't apply to me, it applies to him. So anyway, the judge just kind of looks at me and goes out of the room, comes back with her gown on. They do the all rise thing. None of us stand up because I am your boss. I don't let the servant command me. I put my feet on the table and get in here. We got business to attend to. You got a job to do. You're the fiduciary, right? So she looks at our hero and says, "Hero, what are you here for?" And of course, she says, "Well, I'm just here. I've got some clarification that needs to be had. I'm just here to provide remedy, and my only desire and wish is to stay in honor." So important, because there's only two ways to remain in honor. I agree with thy adversary, quickly pay the debt, or do a conditional acceptance, ladies and gentlemen. That's it. It's that simple. And she says, I just need to some clarity on what I am to provide for remedy. And she says, "Well, if you just go out in the hall, you can just pay the $479, and then that'll take care of that, and you won't have to be here." And she goes, "Well, that's just it. $479 of what?" And the judge says, "Hey, you wouldn't mind staying till the end after we do the arraignments? Would that be okay? And we can handle this afterwards?" We're being invited into a different venue, right? She doesn't want the rest of the common folk to see what's about to happen, because we're about to prove that there is no money. All right. And that all that can be done is discharge, period. Now, we still abandon the property at the end. We walk out without the rights, titles, interest, dividends, derivatives, hediments, general tangibles, general intangibles, trust residue, trust residual, chattels, and securities. We walk out without them. It's a mistake. We're still working on that aspect. But after the arraignment, she calls the hero back up, and the hero, she says, "Now, what does this pertain to? You just need to know how to pay?" And she says, "Yeah." What species? And the judge looks at her and goes, "Cash," like a vulture, cash. And it was so funny because our hero turns around and goes, "Can you provide me a definition for that?" And I'd be more than happy to provide that remedy if you could just tell me what cash is. And she goes, judge says, "Can you just tell the court that you can't pay?" And she goes, "Well, that's the problem. I'm just here to remain in honor. I would love to provide remedy. And if remedy can't be had, then I just assume this be discharged and settled." And the judge says, "Well, if you could just tell the court that you can't pay." Well, our hero says, "Well, all I need to know is what to pay with, and perhaps I can. I'm just here to remain in honor and provide remedy." And the judge finally says, "I'm just going to discharge this matter, and the court's going to find that you just can't pay." Now, isn't that amazing? 479, whatever they were asking for, just poof, magically disappears because someone knows a little more than they should, right? And immediately the prosecutor wheels over to the defendant's side and says, "You could have just came and talked to me about this, and we could have settled this outside of the court." Isn't that funny that he's so disgruntled about her coming in there asking for clarification when we had been to his office 2 weeks before that, and he showed us sticky notes, and he said, if we gave you one of these, then we want one of these back. And I thought to myself, well, that's the very principle of negotiable instruments. If the negotiable instrument, the promissory note, creates the debt, then rightfully another negotiable instrument can cancel the debt, can it? Because if you give me a sticky note, then I expect one of these back, another sticky note back. So see, we couldn't get remedy through the prosecutor because the prosecutor is trying to keep up the facade because he doesn't want to bust out his checkbook at the end of the day and have to pay for it. And all we need is clarity on what we're to pay. Now, if they say, and they'll never say this because they're not dumb enough to say this, Federal Reserve notes, the question then becomes, what is your proprietary interest in me using somebody else's privately copywritten, trademarked intellectual property? And how do I get it? Where do I get it? How do I acquire it? The prosecutor says, well, get a job. Well, to pull a job is actually an illegal activity. It's illegal to pull a job. It's illegal to have a job. All right. Well, how do I come to conclude that? It's very simple. Look at it in this fashion. tomorrow, Tom and I are going to go to the bank and pull a job. Are you still with me?
I'm with you.
I'm here.
The power.
We're still blasting.
The power of words, the power of that scripture is wonderful. So those are the 20 maxims of equity. Okay. And the trust indenture governs the trust. So people go, well, the Constitution, first you have to identify what the Constitution is. And that Constitution is a trust indenture because it had the intent to preserve the posterity of the people, period. Okay. And that trust indenture cannot be breached by agents and agency for any reason, period. All right.
I have a question. So, these are all defenses to an accusation. And I understand and I get how the strategy works as an
offense is a way of war. And if you create the controversy, it tells us in the good book that you will reap what you sow. I'm a man of peace, an ambassador of peace. If you bring a claim against me, I will respond. If you bring no claim against me, I have no reason to react.
Yes, I get that. And yes, and certainly we are picking a fight when we talk about offense. I mean, make no mistake about it.
That's why I make asseverations instead of declarations, because declaration is a term of war.
How do we stop these people who are agents for these private organizations from doing this to other people?
You have to do it on your own. That was one of the hardest lessons I learned. I had a number of people that would go in with me that are very learned in law. And, by way of force, the judge, magistrate, whatever the hell you want to identify him as, the man wearing the Iron Curtain would remove my competent counsel from the room. And
so what did you do in response?
Ask questions. 45 minutes later, James Bethel walks back into the courtroom, throws his hands in the air. The judge is ready to pull his hair out. And he looks at me and goes, "What are you doing?" Interrupts the court saying this. And the judge is like, "Oh God, what a shit show, And James goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "Well, as soon as they removed you from the room, I remember you told me just to ask questions. So I've been in here for 45 minutes on a matter that should have taken 5 minutes just asking questions." And he goes, that's when I looked at the judge and I said, "Judge, do you mind if I speak to my counsel outside?" He goes, "You may speak to your counsel." And then he changes his mind. He goes, "You may speak to that man out of this courtroom." So we go out in the hall and James is just laughing. He's like, "This is good." He goes, "You realize this is something that should have taken 5 minutes, Derek, and you have now strung this along for an hour and 10, 20 minutes. And he goes, and this judge has an obligation to fleece all these other people in the peanut gallery today. And all you have to do is say a few simple things." And I had a drink of water and I walked back in less than like 30 seconds later. And we were granted 15 minutes to talk. And I walked back in and I sat down and the judge says, "Well, did you get it all figured out?" And sure. And he started to ask me a question again. And I answered his question with a question. You see?
Uh-huh.
Jesus was only persecuted when he made a statement of fact. That's when they got him. Until that point, he always answered a question with a question. We can't get jurisdiction if you're always asking questions, because what do you have a right to? A fair and meaningful trial and hearing.
Okay,
you can't answer the question. That creates an estoppel and an injunction. We're at an impasse. That negates my reasonable right to a fair and meaningful hearing.
All right, so I'm going to use my case as an example because I was there. I gave the sergeant who was commanding these other 3 accomplices to violate my rights under color of law and recklessly endanger me. And I informed him reasonably and calmly of what my constitutional rights were and what the codes were that he was violating and what acts of Congress he was in violation of. And he just said, "I don't care." And he did it anyway. Okay. So I am confident that if I went into the civil courts and I sued him under 1983, he's going to convert the tax dollars into his own property. He's going to pay the fines, maybe even get a paid vacation, and then he's going to go back out there and do it again. And this is the problem. This is my motive for learning all of this, is how do we take these people out of office and have them banned from holding public office?
They're not holding public office is the secret.
Well, whatever you want to call it. So they can't work in those official
administrative ruling. Fourth administrative.
Yeah, you're actually subjecting yourself to them by lending to their jurisdiction, by using their stuff. They're in a separate realm. They're in their own society, buddy.
Well,
they're
and
not
this is
part
why
of the
I'm saying that's my question to you. And I understand that.
Check this out. Do not use their codes. Roman equity is all privilege. Now, if you're accepting a benefit, which is a privilege, then you are underneath the ones who own those writs. And that who owns them? It's Roman law and Roman equity. Caesar owns it. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Render unto God what is God's. I am just a God-fearing man, a righteous man.
Okay, great. I'm not disputing any of that. But what my question to you is, how do we get rid of them?
You're not going to get rid of them because they absolutely have a right to do what they're doing.
Yeah,
the people have to stand up individually on their own, exercising their republic, and remove them from their lives.
Yeah,
here's that simple.
Here's the thing. If you're looking to bring a group of powerful men and women together, they would all have to be standing on this very same premise. They would all have to be of one mind, of one accord. That's what this brings together.
Your key to holding them accountable is Am Jurisprudence 63 Charlie, Am Jurisprudence 63 Charlie 2D. That's your remedy. They have taken their income under a trust with a fiduciary responsibility and duty, making oath to uphold unalienable rights.
Okay.
And administer the grace of God. There's your remedy. And that's why I ask them if they disclaim the trust. I use the 12 presumptions of law. I use the 20 maxims of law. I show the clear conflict of variance between the rules of equity and the rules of at law. And I do a show of cause why this matter shouldn't be sealed and ex parte, handled in the exclusive jurisdiction of equity before a chancellor, a learned man under Article 3, who's qualified under Article 3, subsection 2, subpart 1 of the United States Constitution.
No, there's no exclusive party in this matter. Is
in chambers, in camera.
Okay.
You want to get on a do not detain list? You start talking like this, I promise you, the do not detain list absolutely exists because they don't want to give up their agents and agency. They don't want to bite the hand that feeds them. These agents that wear badges that have an IQ of 60 or 70 are out there bringing them food on the table every day. They're not going to reprimand them. What they're going to do is say, do not touch that man. That's not a person. That's a man.
And the rest don't. Of them, they're going to call sovereign citizens.
Well, exactly. I've been called sovereign citizen by agents and agency, and I just laugh and I go, I hope you can prove your claim. You just allege that I'm a terrorist somehow, and I hope you can prove it, because if you can't prove it, it's slander and defamation of character, and character is one of the most valued things. It's one of the most unalienable rights that you have to uphold, is to protect your character, right? Through trials and tribulations builds character, and character is value. And that's a right. It's property. Your character is property. So somebody slandering and defaming your character based upon their loose lips, throwing slanderous, defaming words at you in front of others is very, very dangerous.
And on video,
not only
on their own video devices,
right?
Work.
So you've made a claim, and I hope you can prove that claim. Because if you haven't proved that claim, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to take your house, I'm going to take your car, I'm going to take your 401k, I'm going to take it all from you. You're going to learn that running your mouth has consequences, because look, everybody has the unalienable right to say what they want, but what they don't realize is that comes with accountability.
Loss.
Responsibility and accountability. I can say that I'm going to kick the shit out of you. That's a terroristic threat, and I can go to jail for that. All right. It's unlawful and it's illegal to say things of that nature.
All right. So can I ask a question for the viewing audience? Those of us that refuse to get license insurance registration, with regard to the plates, because the plates is what the cops see on the street. It's the numbers they run. If the plate doesn't look right, they'll profile the person to say, well, that must be one of those dangerous sovereign citizens. So, what can we do with regard to plates on our vehicles so that we don't attract unnecessary attention,
Right.
and
Right.
so
The
that we
department,
can't be accused of attaching a plate?
right. The Department of Transportation, right. The Secret Service and the Department of Motor Vehicles. And you're gonna ask this very, very, very simply and eloquently. Remember, if you're creating 90-page documents, you're cutting your own throat. These people don't have time to read all that shit.
Agreed.
It's this simple. Am I, as a man, Derek Satan Gonzalez, required to register my private household consumer goods? You're going to send that to the chief deputy or the chief of the DMV. You're going to send it to the chief of the DOT, and you're going to send it to the chief of the secretary, the Secret Service.
Mm-hmm.
The Secret Service is charged with upholding all our unalienable rights, guys. Right. They're amazing. They actually work for the American people.
I saw a reference.
They're bad to the bone.
Yeah,
they're bad to the bone.
I saw a reference to that.
They work directly for the president of the United States, who wears multiple hats as well.
So does that mean that we're supposed to report those state troopers and sheriff's deputies and city cops who try to deprive those inalienable rights under color of vehicle code? Do we report them to the Secret Service?
Bingo.
Absolutely. And I also attach the governor to it, because the governor is the one that appoints all those knuckleheads to be out there anyway. They're operating underneath his bond. They do blanket bonds now. Nobody's independently bonded anymore.
So does that mean I can sue the governor of California?
You would always go after the governor. He's the president of California. You bet. You go after the man who sometimes acts as governor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, now we're talking.
Yeah.
Now you got it.
Look, and not only that, Charlie Sprinkle shows us something very important. He says, not only did I go after Ronald Reagan, he said I went after his wife as well, because his wife was an accessory after the fact because of the unjust enrichment that benefited her lifestyle. So he tied the wives up. Did he win a
case?
He smoked them.
The Secret Service came to his house and asked him if he dropped the case, he would never be bothered again, ever.
Then he went out in his little sports car and did a burnout in front of a cop, and the cop pulled him over and said, are you Charlie? He said, yeah, I'm Charlie. He says, is there anything I can do for you, Charlie? He says, no, the governor just said I'd never be bothered again if I dropped my claim against everybody and their wives. And he said, Charlie, I just stopped you to see if I could help you today. You have a good day. And he said, and I burned tires and went right back up to 90 mile an hour down the interstate. He said, never got bothered again. It's about standing up. Freedom isn't free, guys. It's not free. I'm telling you, get ready, because you're going to lose everything to do this. Yeah. You're going to lose it all.
I lost everything doing this.
Let me tell you what the scripture tells us.
I have nothing left to lose and nothing other than this to fight and die for.
It is easier to take a poor man and enter him in the gates of heaven than it is to thread a camel through the eye of a needle. Yep. It's easier to take a poor man into the kingdom of heaven that has nothing than it is to take a rich man who thinks he has everything and wants to take it all with him.
Yeah, Lord works in mysterious ways, and to bring you forward. Well, then hold on a minute. To bring him forward to this, Derek, because remember I told you I'm not a religious man, and I'm not a religious man either, and Derek's not a religious man, but we're spiritual.
No, very spiritual. Check this out. Article 1, Section 10 is beautiful, and Rourke is the one that pointed this out to me, and I was just flabbergasted. Not only is Article 1, Section 10 so powerful because, well, it goes into money and it goes into everything else, but it also tells you that you have the right to contract privately without the encroachment of any government or corporation, right? What Article 10 doesn't tell you is that Article 10 gives you the right to create contracts or trust at will. Trust being the highest law in the land, because everything is a trust. The Declaration of Independence is a document based upon trust. The Bill of Rights based upon trust. The Articles of Confederation based upon trust law. Ladies and gentlemen, as soon as you realize all this stuff pertains to trust, you can change the way that your perception is working.
So to move a court, you're in essence creating your own trust.
That's right. It is already a trust. What they did when they created the charges was create a trust. And we've just never been taught this. And it really is the key.
So Yeah, because I hear you with are you disclaiming the trust?
I don't even have to create the trust. I can just express the trust. They created it. Now I can express it, and I can express that I'm the beneficiary, and the trustee doesn't have to be known. And Judge, Your Honor, I'll appoint you co-executor here in this matter. And who might be the trustee that has the securities coming forward to balance these books today?
I'm the one that I'm the one that appoints people here.
Perfect. Then I suggest that you appoint that prosecutor before I appoint you with a Form 56 as fiduciary, and I make you liable for all this.
I appoint the people here.
Wonderful. So at this point, that you're derelict in your duty, you're in breach of public policy, you're in breach of your fiduciary oath of office, and now you are involved in conspiracy, which is a trespass against I, a man, causing I harm. Is that the route we should go today?
Yep. Beat him like a baby seal.
I have no problem getting just compensation from you too in your conspiratorial act, unjustly enriching yourself and causing I, a man, harm. I have no problem wrapping you up in it. So you can either do your job and do what's right, because I'm entitled to the rights, titles, interest, dividends, derivatives, debentures, hediments, general tangibles, general intangibles, chattel securities, trust res, trust residuals, and derivatives. So cough them up. Chop, chop. I need W7s, W8s, W9s. I need, you guys are doing business. It all needs to be reported to the IRS so I can get my recoupment. It's that simple. Not to mention that the DAs
to you,
not to mention that the DAs invested in identity theft, aggravated identity theft, threat, duress, coercion, conspiracy against my unalienable rights. He's involved in RICO. He's in collusion with now what appears to be the judge, the chief of police, and himself, fabricating crimes that don't really exist.
So now,
looking for somebody to pledge themselves as trustee and surety, and I'm not.
All the men that are in the position of, I've already lost everything. And if you are a man and you can get together with other men, and then you're, I would say that's a powerful group.
Look, all commerce is based on two maxims in equity. I'm going to repeat this again. All commerce is based on two maxims in equity. Are you ready for them? Do not ever waive these two maxims. Equity will not aid a volunteer, and equity will not perfect a complete and imperfect gift. All right? Those are the two maxims that everything at law, statute, code, city ordinance, rules, and regulations utilize right here.
If you ask me, the maxims are relative to, or they relate to the Sun Tzu Art of War.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because as you're talking about the 20 maxims, and I'm reflecting on Sun Tzu's Art of War, I'm like, it's the same thing.
Right. And when we're looking at these 20 maxims, it's important to separate the public civil Roman maxims from the exclusive jurisdiction of equity maxims. Only 20 of them. That's it. Now, if I go and open up
the 20 are the equitable.
The ones that the ones that I read off. Yeah.
Roger that.
Yeah. I'm looking for something else.
For all our talented transcriptors out there, if you want to transcript a lot of the important information that Derek's sharing here, this is, to me, this is the crossroads of, and I've watched other successes in the past, in my role as a journalist. And remember, there is no channel or show anymore. There's nothing monetized. They trashed that channel. Boom, goodbye, terminated. It's out of here. So this is all just freely given and freely give.
Yeah. Well, before I head out here, because I have some other things I got to do today, I want to close with this. All right. And I just want you to close your eyes and open your mind, open your heart, spiritually allow it to uplift you, because here it comes. And it's so powerful. 12 maxims of equity. Equity acts upon the person, forcing him or her to do what conscience requires. The conscience of God. It's within you. All right. You've got temples on each side of your cranium. You are the temple. You're supposed to keep your temple clean, ladies and gentlemen. Good food intake. You're supposed to stay away from spirits, which are alcohol. You're supposed to, keep that temple clean. And if equity acts upon the person, right, the personam, forcing him or her to do what conscience requires, then equity will not suffer a wrong without a remedy. And if equity will not suffer a wrong without a remedy, then equity imputes an intention to fulfill an obligation. And if equity imputes an intention to fulfill an obligation, then equity acts specifically and not by way of compensation. And if equity acts specifically and not by way of compensation, then equity regards that as done which ought to be done. And if equity regards that as done which ought to be done, then equity requires him who seeks equity to do equity. And if equity requires him who seeks equity to do equity, then equity regards the beneficiary as the real owner. And if equity regards the beneficiary as the real owner, then equity delights to do complete justice and not by way of halves. And if equity delights to do complete justice and not by way of halves, then equity acts for those disabled to act for themselves. The legally disabled, I'm just a legally disabled idiot, Your Honor. And if equity acts for those disabled to act for themselves, then equity looks to the intent rather than the form. And if equity looks to the intent rather than the form, then equity delights in equality. And if equity delights in equality, then equity requires diligence, clean hands, done in good faith for good reason. Now that is the teeth of your document right there. Those 12 maximums done with great diligence, clean hands, good faith, and for good reason to provide remedy to any and all I may have caused harm, whether inadvertently or inadvertently cause them harm. I want it to be known and stated for the record, I am here to provide remedy. Everybody's absconding from their obligation, and that creates the controversy. Creating the controversy gives them the opportunity to lord over you. Because a magistrate only can rule when controversy exists. If you grant the name to the court and you come forward as a beneficiary and you state there are no facts in dispute, I waive all benefits without God, you have removed all controversy. The only thing that is left to do is for the trustee to come forward with the securities and balance the ledger. That's it.
Okay, so I have a question for you. Where cops collude with tow companies and they take everything.
Yeah, did the cop make the order to have the automobile taken from the side of the road? Then the obligation falls upon the cop and the principal, right?
Okay, and then the tow company attempts to extort money, and when the ransom is not paid, they convert that property to their own.
Title 18, 1661, piracy on land, stealing looty and booty, which is it's punishable by hanging. That law still exists on the books.
Okay, so my mind is saying, well, is death a fair punishment for taking someone's home and recklessly endangering
trampling on somebody's unalienable rights is absolutely an offense that should be punished by death.
And nobody wants this.
Guys, wait a minute. My personal, although a prosecutor may deal harsh blows, he must do so fairly and in the interest of justice. I'll tell you right now,
if Chimos were swinging from...
Wait a minute. As much as I dislike those people, as much as I want them to suffer criminal penalties and pay me what they owe me, I don't feel like that they should lose their lives because I didn't lose mine. That's not equitable.
At the same token, the tree of liberty must be watered from time to time, and we know that is not talking about H2O. All right? So if one judge was to be hung tomorrow for high treason, do you think the rest of his crony buddies would get in line real quick? I bet they would.
I understand that the punishment, the criminal punishment is the deterrent to crime.
Wait a minute. We didn't make it, man. He didn't make it and I didn't make it. Remember, we didn't create it.
It doesn't matter.
The founding fathers are the ones that decided that.
Roger that, and they took an oath to it. No, they took the oath to be hung.
Guys. Wait a minute. Listen,
put me in
I want
jail.
you to hear me out for a minute. Even though I don't feel like he should die, okay, I do feel, number one, my home was taken, my medicine was taken, my food was taken, my relief benefits were taken, my security of person was taken. I suffered bodily injury as a result.
Well, and you come up with what's fitting for compensation.
It would stand to reason that an equitable remedy and a fair punishment is that he loses his home, he loses his food, he loses all of the things that I lost.
Right.
And for the equivalent amount of time.
Is that make him wish he was dead?
I agree with you, because you know this more than anybody, because you've experienced it, as have I, as has Scott. The fact of the matter is, there are things worse than death: to lose everything and be devoid, be a vagrant at their whim. And it's far worse than death, I can assure you.
It's a violation of the peonage statutes.
Right. And I agree with you in that sense. But you're asking for corrective measures to be instituted amongst all these cretins who continue to subvert from law. And one of the biggest ways to do that is, unfortunately, is by exhibition of somebody losing their life for their breach of their trust. The trust law is very, very sacred. It goes all the way back to the beginning.
I mean, you sound to me like this is the first thing you've said today that does not to me sound equitable.
Well, okay? did they take your life?
No, I'm here. I'm alive.
Do you have a place to dwell?
I didn't when they took it, and I didn't for 2 years. I almost died on the streets as a result.
There's a maxim that says, hold on. There's a maxim that says this: he who provides the ends provides the means. He who provides the means provides the ends. It doesn't matter which way you say it. So
basically, it's up to me to decide, as the one prosecuting the matter,
that's
as to
right,
what is fair and equitable. And that's another thing that that the audience should keep in mind is just what I said about the prosecutor's duty. Although he may request death sentences and all of that, it really must serve fairness and justice, the maxims of equity.
Let me tell you,
death comes in a magnitude of ways. It doesn't mean necessarily the end of life.
Yeah, let me tell you something. For those parents, moms and dads, I don't want to get lost in that's legalese. I say what I mean what I say. For those that have had their children taken from them, you're talking about houses and cars. Well, hold on. You're talking about houses and cars and these types of hardships being placed upon you. Now, you look at all the millions of parents out here that are trying to figure out how to get their children back through a system that, if they just knew simply who they are, this thing's supposed to come down, to something. You can't put a value to your kid. There's no amount of money you're going to pay someone back for they just lost 10 years with their kid. Not a baby goat.
Right.
Okay?
I mean, I hear you. I understand. How do you put a value on that?
You can't. Yeah. Look,
well, and that's why I look at those kinds of situations, and I look to the statutes, and I look to the sentences that are defined in statutes, and I say, well, even though I may not be able to arbitrarily say that, well, they kidnapped my kid for 10 years, so I want them to go to jail for the rest of their life, which is arbitrary. I can look to the statutes and say, well, it says right here that kidnap carries 10 years. Okay, 10 years. You go to jail 10 years.
You're turning back to man's and not God's. The harsh penalties that were put in place to violate the trust, as he's speaking of, if they're not in place, then there's nothing
to violate trust is a penalty of death. Yeah. Trust is the highest law on the land. Now, I agree with you. I'm not out for blood, and I don't want blood on my hands. Okay?
Right. None of us.
But here's the thing. I tell you what, you encroach upon my offspring's liberty. There are things worse than death, and knowledge will prevail. And I'll tell you this much, I'll leave you destitute. You will wish you were dead by the time I'm done. Okay, so I agree with you.
There you go.
I agree with you, but there is another way here that may have to unfortunately be exhibited. And the founding fathers did speak about it wholeheartedly. I mean, these people were labeled as tyrants, and they had $25,000 bounties on their head back in 1600s. That's an astronomical amount of wealth back
today.
Right. So they sacrificed everything on sound principles and doctrines, that all men are created equal, that no man has the right to lord over another absent a contract or a crime where a victim is involved.
So let me ask you something. Could I go and put a lien on every one of these officials' homes and their vehicles?
Only through their corporate
That's equitable.
That's a commercial activity.
Yeah,
and yes, you can do that.
So one of the retaliation tactics I've seen the de facto officials use on people that file liens where they may or may not have, just cause to do so, they'll hit them with false lien charges and they'll drop them in prison that way.
And here's how that works. I just watched a woman go through this, and she was dead to rights. She had the judge by the short and curlies, and she knew it, and she put a lien against them, and they threatened her. So that's threatened intimidation of a witness, which is a federal offense. Yep. And they did it by way of mail. And yeah, so even greater offense, right? And they just kept stockpiling it. And eventually it went before a magistrate who looked at it and said, this lien has been perfected. And your frivolous claim is now being dismissed by order of the court. Now, what they were trying to get her to do was redact and recant her UCC1 filing. And when you do that, what you do is you admit through omission that you falsified a record, which is fraud, and then they put you in jail. Do not remove your damn claim. If you know in your heart of hearts that you have done your claim and for good reason, see, I'm going to give you the ticket, the key to my success is everything is done in good faith, with clean hands, with good conscience, and for good reason. That is the teeth in the document. A shark is absolutely harmless without its teeth. Would everybody agree with that?
Yeah.
I just gave you your teeth. Tear them up. Clean hands, good faith, good reason, with good conscience is why I come forward to seek remedy for all parties.
I come forward today with clean hands and good faith.
Yep. With good sound reason, good sound doctrine to provide remedy to all involved.
For a sound
every man, woman, and child.
For a sound
I'm completely walking away from their structure and standing with the good Lord in his good word, administering the grace of God.
Amen.
It's that simple.
It says there will come a day when no man will heed sound doctrine.
And we're here. We're here.
We're here.
Yeah. Look, hell exists as above, so below. I watch people walk around in hell all day long. I owe, off to work I go. That's their mantra, right? And it tells you not to be a debtor in the good book. It says if you're a debtor, then you will serve mammon, right? And mammon is not going to treat you very well. But if you serve me and you walk with me and you trust in me and you give it all up, give it away, I will provide a way. And he does. And it's really hard for us as man to do that because our indoctrination in between the ages of being born and 7 years old, we are ingrained to obey, respect authority, never question anything, just agree and move forward in silence. That's slavery. And you got to come up out of her. It tells us in the good book, come up out of her. You Babylonians, come up out of her. Stop. I had a judge tell me one time, you're just babbling. And I got to thinking about what he was saying. I was like, I'll be damned. I'm using pronouns and adjectives. I'm not using anything of substance and merit at all. And worse off, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm playing their game without knowing the rules.
Now, if you'll do me a favor, Derek, I sent you a recording in your private message. And
I'm not on.
Maybe let me play it.
According to my buddy who's a private contractor with the NSA, he said never put Facebook on your computer, and I never have.
All right,
and I never
don't worry
will.
about it. Listen to this. I want you to listen. 6 minutes and 54 seconds. I know you need to probably break loose, probably go eat, or because I know you got up out of bed and came and did this, brother. And I so much appreciate this, and I can't express to anyone that's hearing this what a gift you're receiving.
Well, I don't have all the answers.
Yes, and I want to say thank you very much. Thank you very, very much.
Right,
Not just for today.
Let me play this, Derek. I don't think you've listened to it yet.
Hey, everyone. This is I think my 2500th seminar in the past 30 years. I've been in law 30 years now. I'm 66 years old. I'm going to be 67 this year. on September 17th, 1949. I got into this in 1980 when my children were taken from me in a divorce. The judge that took my children, I prosecuted him for under the 1964 Civil Rights Act for apartheid and sex discrimination, and he was disbarred. And he was reappointed again 7 years later, and I had him disbarred 2 weeks later. And he was appointed again 7 years after that, and he was disbarred a third time by me. And when he got on the bench, he passed away in 1997. So he never was able to sit the bench and take children from anybody else. When I lost my children in 1980,
Yep, but it didn't fix the problem. And the problem that people need to recognize.
No. I want to hear what Derek's going to say. I want to hear what he has to say about this, because this is the point I've been trying to make all day.
It wasn't about suing the man who did that. It was about suing a organization called Judges,
the fact
who had the power to take away children.
The issue at hand here is the fact that they're absconding from looking at the contracts. You got to go.
Yes, judges need to put criminals in jail, rapists, bank robbers, murderers, people that drive 100 miles an hour through a school zone. Yes, these people belong behind bars. But when you're in a position of making judgment on another human being for profit, that's wrong. That's rape. That's rape in the first degree. Rape is using force to create a performance from another human being. And throughout my life, after I put Stanley Miller, was his name, in jail, he was another judge that broke the law several times, and I prosecuted him. I've been doing this for prosecuting judges for 35 years. I had a judge named Wazalewski, and I was in front of him 65 consecutive times.
All right. So let's get into child support, the trafficking of persons, the trafficking of humans, the trafficking of children. All right. When we look at the due process of law pursuant to Public Law 103-66, the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1993, this is when Slick Willie Bill Clinton was in office, and consequently him and his wife have been alleged to be removing people, women and children and men, from Haiti and selling them around the world. All right. So just to put into context, he was also part of that Jeffrey Epstein scandal as well, where they were shipping women and kids to foreign islands and doing God knows what with them. All right. So I just want you to remember who put this stuff all into play was Slick Willie, Billy Clinton. All right. And if I was in Arkansas, I'd probably be already dead stating these facts. But here we go. Due process of law pursuant to the Public Law 103-66, the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1993, CSEA must afford due process safeguards. And 45 CFR 303.101C2, the due process rights of the parties involved must be protected equally. All right. And Section 466, Title 42 USC 666 A3A. All right. Now pay attention to this title. Title 42 USC 666 A3 capital A. CSEA must be in full compliance with all procedural due process requirements. They are not, because they are not fully disclosing what is happening. Okay. Now hold on. Pursuant to Section 466, Title 42, USC 666 A5CI, procedural due process requirements, procedure for a simple civil process for voluntarily acknowledging paternity, under which the state must provide that before a man or woman can sign an acknowledgement of paternity, they must be given notice orally or through the use of video or audio equipment and in writing. It doesn't say one or the other. It says all and in writing. Now, Title 45 CFR 302.34 is the Title 4D contracts. All right. I'm going to show you how this is all commercial. And once you can show that the governor is unjustly enriching himself, the attorney general, the secretary of state, the bar attorney, the American Bar Association created the principles, or not even principles, they created the rules and regulations for child support. So you can't even hire a lawyer without being a conflict of interest, because the lawyer is a member of the American Bar Association and governed by them as such, and his first duty and allegiance is to the court, second to the Bar Association, third in the interest of justice, and fourth is to his client. And if they should ever come into conflict, his allegiance must lie with his first contract, all right, to the court. Now, Title 45 CFR 302.34 is a Title 4D contract. Contractor refers to a government entity with whom the CSEA enters into Title 4D contract. Governmental entity. Now, anytime that a governmental entity engages in commerce, they are now demoted to the mere standing and status of a corporation, and not only can be sued, but can also sue. Right. Governmental entity includes the following entities in the same county as the CSEA, Child Support Enforcement Agency. It does not take a rocket scientist to see the clear conflict of interest. Now, I'm going to show you everybody that's contracted under Title 45 CFR 302.34, which is the Title 4D contracts. Number one, the court is contracted through Title 45 CFR 302.34. Number two, a prosecutor or other law enforcement officials, such as your sheriffs, all right, the deputies. Number three, a sheriff. Number four is the clerk of the court. Number five is a clerk. Number six is a recorder's office, okay? And number seven is the treasurer's office of any or other public or governmental agency or official. And number eight is governor. These people are all bound by a contract under Title 31 USC 6305 called cooperative agreements. This is the contract between the state and the Federal Office of Child Support that only benefits the United States Federal Corporation, Title 28 USC 3002 15A. The department may enter into a cooperative agreement with the public entities in accordance with Title 45 CFR 302.34 and contracts with private entities for the purpose of carrying out the responsibilities granted by the Division of OCSS, Office Child Support Services, as a Title 4D agency. An executive agency shall use a cooperative agreement as the legal instrument reflecting a relationship between the United States government and a state. These are all entities, ladies and gentlemen, corporations, dead entities. A local government or other recipient when, one, the principal purpose of the relationship is to transfer a thing, not offspring, a thing of value to the state, local government, or other recipient to carry out a public government purpose of support or stimulation authorized by a law of the United States Federal Corporation, instead of acquiring by purchase, lease, or barter property or services for the direct benefit of the United States government. And two, substantial involvement is expected between the executive agencies. Now, this is where they're going to commingle jurisdictions. Remember the Separation of Powers Act? Well, the judiciary officers can't remove themselves from the judiciary and supplant themselves in the executive branch, which is exactly what they're doing with this child court, family court business. And I say business because that's exactly what it is.
Exactly what it is.
They can't put you in contempt of. They can't put you in contempt of court in a venue that is not a court. When you're going through family court, that is not a judicial part of the judicial branch. It's actually part of the executive branch. And I'm going to show it to you right here. Substantial involvement is expected between the executive agencies and the state, local government, or other recipients when carrying out the activities contemplated in this agreement. Title 42 USC 654.3. This is where it gets good. This is the meat and potatoes, which is a single and separate entity of Title 4D child support, now goes into a cooperative agreement under Title 45 CFR 302.34 with the counties for the benefit of the state treasury. Now, Blessings versus Freestone is 5 women in Arizona who came against the state, stating that they had not been compensated for child support, and they were now moving against the state, okay, and suing the state. And what happened in this case is so important. The ruling came down conclusively that although the child received a benefit from child support payments, It is not a right of the offspring to the father's currency, to his labor, all right, to the money. It's merely an incidental benefit, because the true reason for the creation of child support was to benefit the state treasury.
We have lawyers on. We have lawyers on the record.
Child support.
We have lawyers.
The state comes after you, and they have cause and standing.
So here we go. I'm going to show you how to disembowel these sons of bitches, because I did it. The state plan will provide that the state will enter into an agreement which are reflected in a record for cooperative agreement under 303.107 of this chapter with appropriate courts, law enforcement officials such as district attorneys, attorney generals, and similar public attorneys and prosecutors, correctional officials, and Indian tribes or tribal organizations. Such arrangements may be entered into with single official covering more than one court, officials, or agencies if the single official has the legal authority to enter into an agreement on behalf of the courts. We're talking about agent and agency, principal and trustee. This is trust law, guys. Officials and agencies. Such arrangements shall contain provisions for providing courts and law enforcement officials with pertinent information needed in locating non-custodial pay rents. All right, PARENTS. If you separate it and put a hyphen in between PA, you get pay rents. You're paying rent on a thing. Okay, they're not actually taking your offspring. They're creating mayhem by our willful ignorance. If you authenticate the birth certificate, there's nothing they can do to move it. It's yours. Establishing paternity and securing support to the extent that such information is relevant to the duties to be performed pursuant to the agreement. Okay, this is showing that it's all business. Now, remember, when the government steps out of being governmental and starts to partake in business, they're demoted to the mere status of a corporation and can sue and be sued, and may relate to any other matters of common concern. Under matters of common concern, such arrangements may include provisions for the investigation and prosecution of fraud directly related to paternity and child and spousal support, and provisions to reimburse courts and law enforcement officials for their assistance. All right, this is all a scheme and a racket, ladies and gentlemen.
While your sheriff is going along with putting child support violators.
He's entered into the contract with them. It says that it's voluntary, but it turns around later on in this 32-page document.
Part of the executive, isn't it? Isn't that making him part of the executive?
And it violates the Separation of Powers Act. And the governor is complicit in it. So is the Attorney General, the Bar Association. They're all in on it. And again, a huge shout out to Ahmed Osiris. This man is brilliant. They took $9 million from him, 3 homes. I think he had a total of 5 homes at one point. Sports cars, self-made, did very well for himself, got in a divorce. And when they found out how much he had, they fleeced him because he chose to stand. And they made an enemy, and this man brings hard-hitting truth. I sent this document to the Secret Service, Department of State, DOJ, the local municipality, the sheriff's office, the Attorney General, Secretary of State, the governor. I sent it to the FBI. I was not playing around. This document here is so powerful because it explains the whole shit show is a conspiracy against a living man with living soul, and I am going to nail your nuts to the wall if you so much as sneeze in my direction at this point. So, separation of powers clearly states the legislative, judicial, and executive branch shall forever remain separate, and no one person from one branch shall exercise the duties of another, period. Granted,
I'm back to my question a minute ago. How do we stop them and prevent them from doing this anymore to other people?
You can't prevent them from doing it to other people because other people willfully and blindly enter into contract, and we cannot stop free will. Not even God can prevent your free will. Right. Isn't that amazing?
Yes, but isn't this whole thing seditious conspiracy?
Yes, because listen. What we're doing right now is how you do this. What we're doing
exactly.
Right now.
Who made you enter into the contract? If by default, if you knew nothing about the contract and by default, for your protection, you go into a certain status.
But if the contract is unconscionable, it's unenforceable.
I agree. But if you don't know your rights, then you don't have any rights, do you, my friend?
Right, and let me interject.
Who's the only one that can say it's an unconscionable contract?
Derek, would this sound correct?
You.
I am man have found that this contract is I am man have found that this contract with child support enforcement is unconscionable.
Yeah, it's void in abitio, failure to disclose. I mean, you just keep going on and on and on and on.
Yes, but if we leave it at that, if we leave it at that, the lay person, the lay parent, and the children are left subjected to that deceitful strategy. It is fraud by omission.
And I have to take you back to 1 Timothy, brother, because look, I told you, in those 20 maxims are so powerful. Maxims are self-proving, self-evident. People have challenged them for thousands of years, but never been able to overturn them because they're just sound doctrine.
I know.
Check this out. Check this out.
Take those maxims and apply them against the organization.
You can if you know what you're doing. You're not going to liberate a bunch of people. It's a fallacy to think that you can liberate anybody. Here, look, I'm not even here to change your belief today because I am cognitively aware that belief is the most powerful thing in the world, and not even God himself will try and change your belief. But I will do this much. I will plant some seeds and allow you to think and evolve. Once you come into your own, then you make a conscious decision if you're going to self-govern. Yeah. If you know thy law, and thy law is simple, it's so simple it need not even be mentioned. That's how absolutely asinine this whole system is. But it was put in place by God to lead us back to him and his good word. Because with free will, he knew we were going to do nefarious shit. But he couldn't stop us from it because that negated his free will that he instituted in the first place. The power to create can never be greater than the creator, right? And thus man created government, government created corporations, and the corporations created persons. Man is the highest freaking authority on the land next to God. We exhibit sovereignty, but we are not sovereign in ourselves. Why? Because our power to create can never be greater than the creator. He is truly sovereign, and I am submissive and subservient to he and he alone. Right.
So let me ask you something about sovereign citizen, because I had a judge look at me. I went in for a no registration, no license. And I asked him, I says, he started asking me discovery questions. And I was like, wait a minute, Your Honor, who's this person to my left? He says, that's the prosecutor. And I said, you're the judge, right? He says, yeah. I said, now, isn't he the trier of the case and you're the hearer of the facts? He says, yeah. I said, well, why are you asking me discovery questions to whether or not I was driving without a license? Isn't that his? I said, that's practicing law from the bench. I said, do I have to recuse you? He says, oh, I know who you are. You're one of those sovereign citizens.
Oh, you made a claim. I'm glad you made that claim. I hope you're willing to back it up with a hazard bond. You just slandered and defamed my character on record. Let the record reflect and show that there's a hostile, seditious man sitting on the bench wearing a dress like a cross-dressing yuppie, making slanderous statements, and let the record reflect that I have been caused harm by way of trespass by his slanderous behavior. Watch how quickly he's like, oh, whoa. I know that's not what I said. I think we better let the trustee handle it from here, huh? Because the beneficiary is known. I waive all benefits without God, and I'm just here to provide remedy. Let that be known for and on the official record. I'm not here to abscond from any duty, rights, titles, and interests that I hold or owe to anyone. I'm here to provide remedy. And there are no facts in dispute because there are no facts on the record, because that record isn't public in the first instance. It's a private bar guild member, and I clearly articulated that in the 12 presumptions of law, and which nobody rebutted, so they admit through omission. Silence is acquiescence. Let the record reflect there is no man, woman, child, agent, and agency in here that states or rebukes to the opposite.
With a handwritten letter.
You take the court. It's yours.
Okay.
Throw the onus of probandi back on them. That's why I'm never on the offensive.
You've answered my question. Now I got another one. I got pulled over again. Same thing.
Sure.
And I gave the officer notice that he was in violation of the Ku Klux Klan Act and the RICO Act. And he says, well, there's statutes.
It's not your job to educate these monkeys on the side of the road. It is dangerous. That's why I'm telling you,
you're in violation of the Ku Klux. Mm-hmm. Well, I know, but he seemed like an okay fella. All right. Sure. And I was trying to give him an opportunity.
You have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have a right to return.
If you can't everything I said was reasonable notice of what the law is and what the Constitution says.
Yeah, but your law might not be this.
Just listen, hear me out. And so he went ahead and he he gave the complaint to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor took it to court. And of course, I'm not going to show up because I don't have any obligation to do so. I'm not going to consent to be subject to a crime, a colorable crime. So I had a warrant deputy called me up, and he says, "Hey, you got this warrant you need to take care of." And I asked, I said, "Are you a peace officer?" He says, "Yes." I said, "Well, that warrant in your hand is evidence of a colorable conspiracy to commit racketeering under color of law, and I want you to go arrest that cop, and I want you to notify the judge and the prosecutor that the prosecutor is unwittingly participating in a colorable racketeering scheme." And he says, "Well, I don't know about any of all that. Well, you need to come in here and you need to pay these off." And I says, "Wait a minute, Deputy Dewey." I said, "I did not just hear you say that, because you just implicated yourself." And then he stopped communicating with me.
Well, yeah, because what dollar they want you to pay in?
I don't know. I didn't ask.
No, they don't know.
I didn't ask.
They don't know. Right, you didn't ask. Derek just went through this, man.
I don't have to pay. I don't owe him shit. I don't know, but the point I'm trying to make.
They got to discharge it. They got to discharge it, so you're not in honor because you haven't challenged them with, "What do you want me to pay in?" Look, I did this to Judge Colorado. Her mouth hit the bench. Blam.
Yes, but wait, let me finish. Let me finish. So what I did is I flipped the script. I used the warrant and I used the complaint that the cop made, and I used the warrant that the prosecutor that the judge issued. I used those as exhibits for the colorable crime.
And now you see why I don't act on the offensive. I don't declare war. I don't start war. But my Marine buddies told me, "Derek, never start any shit. But if shit kicks off, finish it, buddy. Don't show no mercy." So I'm never at war. I'm an ambassador of peace. I'm a brother in Christ, and I'm just here to do the good works that our Heavenly Father put me here to do. And I now see a purpose, perhaps, for my life. Right?
I grew up in Mississippi, and we don't take shit off of people.
But here's the thing. If you come on the offensive, would you have had that evidence?
Yeah, you're a belligerent.
You would have never had that evidence if you were on the offensive. First, you had to be on the defense, right?
Yes.
They brought war to you, and now you're using their evidence.
I flipped it into an offense.
Yes, and I agree with what you're saying, but you had me, I misconstrued what you said at first. Well, why don't you just go on the offense with all that knowledge? Well, here's the thing. If I start a war, I got to be able to finish it. You can't prove a negative, and they can deny that any of that stuff applies to them, because nowhere does it say John Doe Smith is adhered and bound to this, right? And they can flip the jurisdiction and say that they're not administering an Admiralty Maritime at this moment in time. So, they've got plausible deniability. So here's the thing. What you're doing right now is correct. You wait for them to make the offensive move, which is an offense to you, and they're committing crimes, and then you use their evidence against them for your position to be acknowledged and recognized. You're turning their evidence into exhibits.
Right. So, I just, when I told that deputy that, I was like, "Look, man, not only are you tampering with evidence by withholding it from the courts, I'm like, you're repeating yourself that you want to help them commit the crime." So, and I've got it all in writing. Where regular conveyance was established, and he can't deny that he failed to give my criminal report due process. Here we go with the 14th Amendment audit. I flipped a ticket into a 14th Amendment audit.
Right, because he falsified a record on the side of the road, presuming and assuming that you were engaged in commerce and in a commercial vehicle hauling passengers or services for goods for profit, for hire. Right, and because they presumed and assumed that, they violated you as an American, as a man, first and foremost. A man that has unalienable rights to use the modern day conveyance, travel to and from as he pleases, his exercise of right of locomotion. And I love the word locomotion versus the right to travel. Travel has some niches in it. The right of locomotion in the modern day conveyances that are private household consumer goods. And even the UCC is in harmony with natural law when it comes to that. And it clearly tells you. So when you're trying to get plates and stuff like that, or you want to create your own plate, create your own damn plate. Put them on notice.
That's what I've
put
done.
them on notice.
Put
the DOT on notice. Put the DMV on notice. Let the Secret Service put them on notice. Create your own bond. Register it at your local courthouse in the miscellaneous filings. If you're lucky, you can get it as an abstract filing, which means it's actually physical, tangible property.
Wait, you cut out for a second. You said register it. Wait a minute. You cut out on me a second. I'm sorry.
Excuse me. I misspoke. You don't register, you record. There's a difference between register and record, and that needs to be.
Okay, so I record what with who?
You record. You create your own bond. I created a bond for $5 million, and then we recorded it on the local county record in the miscellaneous filings. We're trying to get it as an abstract filing because it's actually property that has value because of our wedding signature and our seal, right? Our right thumbprint. And we prove that we have the value. So we register that on
to write a bond that I would file, that I would record.
You're cutting out. They're going to start playing with us now.
Did you say with the DMV?
Well, no, it's him cutting out. I think he's having a weird
thing
on his end.
Yeah, and I'm on a cheap phone. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, here. You want the verbatim? Here you go. Now, it's important that you never say that you got this off the internet or you heard it from some crazy kook on Facebook.
Oh, believe me, brother, I know.
You have
as far as I'm concerned, I don't know nobody, and I ain't seen nobody since 1952.
Hey,
look,
I'm the
check
entertainment.
Check this out. All right, here we go. I'm gonna give it to you. It's so easy. Like I'm telling you, law is simple, ladies and gentlemen. It's so simple. All right. Now I'm going to read this to you. And again, if you tell some kooky DA that you got it off the internet, it's not going to work because you must do things with conviction.
Yeah.
You must know it in your heart to be true.
Yes.
It's a concept due to the fictitious monetary system, and he who provides the ends provides the means. And now that they've taken our gold and silver away and we can't pay, we have the ability to discharge and create negotiable instruments, but we always do them in good faith, with good conscience, for good reason. All right. It's never to harm anybody. Our attempt to perfect what needs to be created in order to survive out of necessity is always done in good faith, without ill will or intent or malice.
When that which is perfect,
I've attached a proven. I've attached a proof.
That which is perfect is come. That which in part will be done away.
Right. I have attached a proven self-insurance bond. The reason I say proven is that I got stopped for expired stickers on the license plate, and I showed an unfiled, notarized original. Because it was not filed with the county clerk, the officer gave me a ticket for no proof of insurance, financial responsibility, or bond. See, when they pull you over, they say license, registration, proof of insurance. They never ask you for your proof of financial stability or bond. You can also have a bond. When I went to the court this morning and finally sat down with the DA chick, she asked me if I had proof of insurance, and I gave her a certified copy of the filed bond, the recorded, not registered. The only thing she asked me was, where did you get this? I asked her what did she mean, and she just repeated the question. I knew better than to say I got it from the internet or from some schmuck reading on Facebook or off the internet. So I said, I wrote it and submitted it to the county clerk for recording. Okay, not registration, but for recording. She asked if I had showed it to the officer, and I said I had, but it was not recorded at the time. She said, since it was recorded now, it was sufficient, and dropped the charges. Okay?
Really?
I, the uppercase, lowercase name, hereinafter the undersigned, do hereby promise to pay, pledge myself as surety as follows. We're in trust law again, ladies and gentlemen. Whereas there exists a requirement in the state of Colorado pursuant to CRS 427-103-14A, statutory, okay, that drivers of motor vehicles have evidence of financial responsibility, and whereas the undersigned may operate a motor vehicle and or may be subject to vehicle code 427-103-14A and its related provisions, and whereas the undersigned has not been able to locate any lawful money of account in circulation, gold or silver, coin or bullion. Remember, paper is nothing more than a receipt, ladies and gentlemen. symbolism for money, but it is not actually money according to the Constitution. In this state or the state's constitution or the United States of America's constitution. And whereas public policy established with the House Joint Resolution 192, June 5th, 1933, which has been repealed, but nevertheless, although they removed it and repealed it there, they placed it elsewhere in statute. It still exists. States in part that every provision contained in or made with respect to any obligation which purports to give the obligee a right to require payment in gold or a particular kind of currency, a specie, or in any amount of money of the United States measured thereby is declared to be against public policy, violation of Title 31. And no such provision shall be contained in or made with respect to any obligation hereinafter incurred. Every obligation heretofore and hereafter incurred, whether or not any such provision is contained therein or made with respect thereto, shall be discharged upon payment dollar for dollar. Title 18, subsection 8. If any coin or currency, which at the time of payment is legal tender for public and private debts, any such provision contained in any law authorizing obligations to be issued by or under authority of the United States is hereby repealed. Okay? Now, therefore, and in consideration thereof, the undersigned does hereby promise to pay, right? Promissory note to pay, bill of exchange, international bill of exchange, right? Undertakes bonds, uppercase name, the debtor, the all caps name, commercial activity for the following amount, $5 million. Now, I think when you go for limited liability insurance, it's like 50,000, 5 million, 5 million. And it's on the record now. In the event that any person is damaged and can demonstrate a bona fide claim of injury or loss, the undersigned shall discharge all obligations dollar for dollar by and through tender of payment pursuant to public policy, House Joint Resolution 192, dated the 9th day of the 10th month of 2009. This piece of paper with his wedding signature and right signet and seal thumbprint, as well as his registered mail number that he had used on the document, proves that this document was created in trust. It clearly articulates its intent to pay the debt. And under Title 18, subsection 8, all obligations are obligations of the United States on the public side, and they can access the trust and the estate and go ahead and make payment through this note that they can then and there monetize because they are part of the banking system.
So can you do this? So
the national debt.
So can you do this whether your birth certificate's authenticated or not? Can you do I am man claim?
Sure you can.
Can you stand
you
as
bet.
the man regardless of where?
You bet.
Okay, I just want to make that a clarity for people out there because I haven't, I don't, for some people that's not even an attainable goal. When I hear authenticate the birth certificate, I'm like a homeless guy. Is probably not.
It's super simple. Let me walk you through it. You just simply walk into the Secretary of State's office and you say, I want to authenticate this document for the United States of America. They're going to ask you your reasons why. And if they go into semantics, are you trying to provide legal advice to me? Are you a lawyer? Are you a registered American Bar Association member? Can I see your bar card? Where do you get your legal advice from? Who authorized you? Who licensed you by the licensor as a licensee to give me legal advice? Watch how quickly they shut up and just do their damn job.
Right.
Yeah.
Record.
See, because if they hold on. So, if they push the subject matter, it's really simple. I need your rights, titles, duties, and obligations. I need a list of them immediately. What are your rights, titles, duties, and obligations? And you better know so because you're getting freaking paid to know your job. And if you can't show me your rights, titles, duties, and obligations to me as a man, you're in big, big trouble.
So to clarify, the bond itself that you record with the clerk, that is basically just you saying, if I cause damages, I will pay any debts that I owe, any damages that I owe.
Right, and they can turn around and monetize that original document. I hold the original, I give it to the prosecuting attorney and say, liquidate it, make everybody whole. And once everybody's made whole and the balance is brought to zero, both the public and private side have been zeroed out, then all the trust residue of that 5 million credits on account that was magically created gets returned back to its source. So if I take out a light pole, I want the light pole replaced because the light it serves a function in society, right?
Right.
So I want that fixed. That's the public side. Now, if I hurt somebody on the private side, I want them made whole too. I want them to be able to go to the hospital, and I want this bond to be liquidated to satisfy any of the financial responsibilities that may ensue or come of my ignorance or neglect.
So millions of people in lockstep creating these bonds can kind of get themselves out of the loop.
Look, the prosecutor's already creating bonds in your good name. You're just unaware of it. That's how this whole shit show works. They're creating negotiable instruments, guys.
Right.
And then we abandon them by walking out of the court after the court is dismissed. When they say it's dismissed, they're giving you 30 days to come forward and claim your property, and nobody's doing it. Now, are you apt to continue keeping a RICO scheme going if only 1 in 100,000 comes forward to claim their dividends, derivatives, and bonds, chattels, and securities? Fucking A right, because it's a $10 trillion a year business, boys.
Yeah, Derek discovered that it was the administrator holding on.
Yeah, I went and talked to the court clerk administrator for the state, that grabs all these bonds and peddles them over into securities in the New York Stock Exchange. And I called him up and I said, look, I'm not going to abandon my property. And he goes, what are you talking about? I said, my rights, titles, interest, dividends, derivatives, debentures, hediments, general tangibles, general intangibles, chattels and securities, trust residue, and trust residual. Do you understand what I'm talking about? He goes, absolutely. I go, great. I'm not going to abandon that in case number CR 106596 in Valley County, Nebraska. And he goes, Derek, in order to find your property, you're going to have to go back to the original administrator. And I thought to myself, why wouldn't you just say judge? He said original administrator, which I now have his personal private contact information. I've still yet to do it, but it is coming, where I'm going to make contact with him in written form and find out where my rights, titles, interest, dividends, derivatives are from the case where I was exonerated 100% free and clear on my own free volition, right? So now I'm owing the securities that were generated from monetizing that paper in my good name through a form of aggravated identity theft.
Wow. So you're saying if what I'm hearing is correct, when they sell bonds on the market, what they're doing is they are selling proceeds from racketeering?
They're not actually selling bonds. They're converting them into securities, and securities pay out over time. A security is anything that matures longer than 9 months. So they're not reporting to the IRS what they're doing, because it's a futures market, which means no currency has been created as of yet. But in 9 months, when it starts to mature, it'll start kicking out dividends and derivatives and all that good fun shit, while they warehouse your assets in jail. You're the asset. They're protecting the asset while the bonds mature. Then they turn loose the asset again.
Because no man ever stepped up.
That's right. Only a man can come forward and make a claim. Everything they're doing is making complaints, and you either fall subject to their jurisdiction due to your ignorance, or you see through the game, you pierce the veil, and you get in there and take care of what needs to be done by invoking trust law.
Like I Am Man, in the I Am Man capacity, you are unjustly enriching yourself with I Am Man's property, i.e., being your kid, your children,
which is a trespass by way of theft and deceptive trade practices, and yada yada yada.
Well, if you don't like your kids, you can always say, for $500,000 a day, I'll agree to contract and you can keep them. You can keep my property, and I'll feel compensated, right? That'd be
yes. And I've seen people's offspring be brought back to them within minutes of making such a contract.
There you go, people. That's what I'm trying to share with you, because I'm pretty up to speed with what Derek is doing, and let me tell you something. It is moving at such a pace. It is very difficult to keep up, and I'm really dedicated at this and keeping up with all of the various types of people that are trying to make America great again. Let's be real about this. I digress.
Yeah, Ken, that's kind of that's the reason I asked a little while ago about, is there a repository where people who are not learned in law, where they can access, for example, the bond to be recorded with the clerks, just a template, pleadings in the court.
That's what I hope to bridge, man. is taking what is absolute success, and obviously Omni, who I've never spoke with, and this is a gift being passed. And if Omni knew a way to do what we want to do, is protect everyone, gosh, we wish we could do that. And like Derek said, people are going to fumble and fall into and be deceived into these contracts. They're even going to defend these contracts, the Matrix, i.e. So if there was a way, I would assure he probably would already be moving in that direction. So we'll see where things go. But to create the bonds for all of these people, man, and put them out of business, it's not profitable for them, to put people in jail. And that type of information will spread, like people that shouldn't be in prison right now. If we can create a bond for them and get them out, where can we streamline this? We would need like an assembly line to basically make that happen. I digress.
Well, my mentor is a computer engineer, and he's been working in computer science since the 70s, and he's currently working on an artificial intelligence that is intended to replace lawyers, attorneys.
Eric needs a website. We need to streamline what's going on here. And
well, so what he's doing is basically, it's just when you access the program, it treats you just like an attorney would. You walk into their office off the street, they start asking you questions. So all of its responses and all of its logic and intuition are generated based upon the relation of the answers that you give to each other, to the statutes, and to case law. So it immediately knows when the matter is decided law, so that you can literally go into a court with a motion for summary judgment.
You're talking about Stardicey's well-established law. But again, that well-established law is nothing more than another man's opinion. And if I wanted their opinion, I'd peel it off my zipper. And that's a polite way of calling them all cocksuckers. All right.
I understand that. And one of the things that this program does is that it runs thousands of iterations with regard to arguments and counter arguments, and it finds the most likely strategy with the most relevant statutes and case law that would be the hardest to argue against. Now, what ended up happening is they pitted this artificial intelligence against a team of 50 attorneys. What took the 50 attorneys a week to do, it did in 10 minutes. And it won the case in every case with those attorneys, because the attorneys were prosecuting a separate case. So
this is a program they want to sell, or you want to put on the public broadcasting system?
Well, this is kind of what I'm talking to him about. What I want to see him do is make it freely available to people, to the common private person. And
what happens when your program starts getting murderers off and drunk drivers who run little kids over in the road?
Well, that's just it. That's where equity. Hold on. That's where equity steps in. You see, you can never replace the man with artificial intelligence. But even more scary now is they actually have a thing that's called real intelligence. Okay. AI is last year, if you will. Yep. Okay. Real intelligence does exist. The computers are now creating algorithms and having their own intellectual conversations with code that the coders don't even understand themselves.
It's talking about us now.
So let me show you how a system like that could, in theory, work, but it would never replace the man who exercises good critical thinking and sound judgment.
Right, and that's the catch, is that there does need to be an attorney when the output is spit out. The attorney, the pro se litigant has the responsibility to make sure.
But again, you're using titles for entity that men operate through. Now let me show you what commerce is.
I know. Hold on. Misled all these years. Don't expect me to change in 5 minutes.
I don't, brother. I love it. I want to make it very clear. Look, what a personam does is grant a man the authority to leave his morals at the door and just allege he was just doing his job. Okay, that's what commerce is. It allows you to subvert from natural law, God's law, and the very principles and essence of law to act in a heinous manner under the guise that you're cloaked with some type of title. I lost you there. So let me go into what I mean. Like, for example,
that's an interesting point, Derek. Interesting point, Derek. We'll talk about that another time.
Yeah, and you can
hold on. He's on.
You can.
We missed what he said.
You can dissect.
Because he cut out. We missed what he said.
Oh, I said that capitalism.
There he breaks up again. That's crazy.
You see
saying
that?
It's true.
You're breaking up again. As soon as you start saying it again, you start
capitalism is inherently criminal. Okay, again.
To a degree, even slavery is found
in the Bible. By what he said, Derek suggested that inherently capitalism, commerce, is criminal.
It's communism.
They hated Jesus. They hated Jesus because he was bad for business. Everyone in the commerce square.
Look, the Roman Catholic people who believe they're Catholic follow a religion that crucified the very people, the very man for which they worship. Isn't that an interesting ideology?
Oh yeah.
The Romans ordered the euthanization of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And now you're a Roman Catholic.
Authoritarians. These are members of the authoritarian organization.
So I'm not against free enterprise, but I'm just here calling it what I see. And clearly, if you own a corporation, ladies and gentlemen, you are a slave owner and you're a part of the plantation. Make no mistake about it. You are using somebody else's labor to enrich your lifestyle through materialistic things.
Yeah.
All right. Some people don't have the frame of mind to be entrepreneurs. If you don't tell them what to do, they absolutely stand around and do nothing.
Yeah, I do not take employment for that very reason. I only contract. That is the only kind of work I will do.
And this is the kind of mindset you have to get the free people to understand, that you are either own property or you are the property. You either know your rights or you don't have any rights. All right. Just on the documentation alone in the public side that they use to summons demons into their court, the dead, if you will, just on their paperwork alone, I can disavow their court system. It's not written in English. A contract to be mutually binding must be written in English. Everybody must understand it. There must be no hidden deceptive language practices utilized within it. And there must be full disclosure. What is this all caps Derek Chaton Gonzalez? I have a right to a fair and meaningful hearing. Is this Latin or French? Because I don't speak either one, and I don't recognize this word meant to be English.
What style, man, do you derive this from?
Right. I need to know. I need clarification before we can play the game. I'm all about playing games. I love being in a court.
But what are the rules?
Yeah, we need clear. I had a judge tell me one time, you realize by representing yourself that I'm going to hold you to the same standard of a lawyer. I'm thinking to myself, oh, great. I can lie. I can be conniving. I can be a shit stain, and I'm still going to prevail. Right? No. I told the judge one time, I said, that man's a liar.
Oh, shit. I think we lost him.
No, I'm here. It's just cutting in and out.
No,
sorry.
We lost Derek, man.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, we did. I don't know. His phone might have gone dead and he wasn't paying attention to the battery. Holy smoke, I'm stopping the recording. We got freaking 4 hours of we're still live on YouTube. I mean, wow. I'm going to cut the YouTube feed off now. Let him go take a break. That's probably a sure sign he needs one.
Yeah.
Folks, this is almost 4 hours of mind-blowing. Can you please wake up and join us? Let's all create bonds. Take care of the program. All right.
And hold your public officials accountable for their violations of the criminal